Watch very carefully, but I'm not making any predictions about what happens beyond that.
As energy prices continue to soar, LBC's deputy political editor, Aggie Chambray, told Andrew ministers are looking into support measures.
People are still saying these are early conversations, but looking at what a support package could look like. And the context, of course, Andrew, is that over the last 6 years, we've had COVID, we've had the Ukraine war. And I think people in Whitehall see that the public has got sort of not used to, but has seen in the past that there have been support packages.
They expect the support.
Indeed, and I think there are questions about whether or not that is really feasible.
Leading European nations say they're ready to join appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Japan also signed the statement. The country's Prime Minister has met President Trump in the White House this afternoon. Iran's Foreign Minister says there will be zero tolerance if its infrastructure is struck again. Energy economist and former senior advisor to Prime Minister Gordon Brown, Nick Butler, has told Tonight with Andrew Marr the problem has intensified in the last few days.
It's now not just a matter of getting ships through the Straits of Hormuz. It's a question of what damage is being done to the production infrastructure, the pipelines, the facilities, which are essential for that supply to keep flowing. It now looks as if this war, listening to the Americans today and to the Iranians, is going to go on much longer than people thought.
The UK COVID-19 inquiry has found messaging used during the pandemic made people think healthcare was closed. Campaigns like Stay Home, Protect the NHS, Save Lives had such an impact that some avoided A&E even for life-threatening emergencies, including heart attacks. Chair Baroness Hallett has praised NHS staff but says the service came close to collapse. The Health Secretary has told LBC anyone who requires a meningitis vaccination following the outbreak in Kent will get it free on the NHS. The UK Health Security Agency says 6 more cases have been confirmed, taking the total to 27. A Morrison's employee who went to Club Chemistry in Canterbury is among them. There have been reports of a shortage of vaccinations, but Wes Streeting told us there are no supply problems and the risk to the public is low.
What we're dealing with the meningitis B outbreak here in Canterbury, it's not like COVID. It's not like flu. It doesn't spread easily. It only spreads through close personal contact.
100 students were turned away from the queue this afternoon because it had reached capacity. The sale of crossbows and hunting arrows is to be banned. The government's planning the move following a series of violent attacks. They include the murders of racing commentator John Hunt's wife and 2 daughters. Existing crossbow owners will need a licence. Plans to expand Wimbledon have been given a boost in the High Court. A judge has ruled there shouldn't be restrictions on how the land earmarked for the development can be used. The All England club hope to build new tennis courts and an 8,000-seater stadium. Campaign group Save Wimbledon Park are contesting the proposals. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 242 points at 10,063. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. The LBC weather, cloudy in southeast Scotland and northeast England tonight, clear elsewhere and becoming chilly in places, a low of 1 degree. Early mist and fog will clear tomorrow to leave another fine, warm day, patchy rain in the northwest later and a high of 18 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Tim Humphrey.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 4 minutes past 7 on LBC. I'm Iain Dale. Don't forget you can watch the whole programme now, not just Cross Question, the whole 3 hours on the LBC app, on Global Player and the LBC YouTube channel. Now, I want to talk about the Strait of Hormuz today, which has been in the news a lot over the past week for obvious reasons, because the Iranians have effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz to most shipping. Not all. They are allowing some vessels through, but obviously nothing to do with America or European powers. And this is about, I think, to cause chaos in the world economy, because if the major world energy supply line is cut, inevitably there are going to be major economic consequences to that. Now, in a sense, I look at this as a little bit separate from the war against Iran that America and the Israelis are conducting, because this affects everybody. I mean, literally, more or less every country in the world that uses oil, some more than others, and particularly Western countries. So, to my mind, it is absolutely vital that Western countries do everything they can to make sure that this vital shipping lane is kept open. However, today, 6 countries issued a joint statement. And I'm going to read you the whole thing. I mean, it's going to take me probably just under a couple of minutes to do so, but it's important that you understand the context for this and what they're saying, because effectively they're saying, yeah, well, we're not going to do anything about it. And I think we will all suffer the economic consequences of that. So it's from Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Italy, the Netherlands and Japan. They say, we condemn in the strongest terms recent attacks by Iran on unarmed commercial vessels in the Gulf, attacks on civilian infrastructure, including oil and gas installations, and the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz by Iranian forces. We express our deep concern about the escalating conflict. We call on Iran to cease immediately its threats, laying mines, drone and missile attacks, and other attempts to block the strait to commercial shipping and to comply with UN Security Council Resolution 2817. Freedom of navigation is a fundamental principle of international law, including under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The effects of Iran's actions will be felt by people in all parts of the world, especially the most vulnerable. Consistent with UNSC Resolution 2817, we emphasise that such interference with international shipping and the disruption of global energy supply chains constitute a threat to international peace and security. In this regard, we call for an immediate comprehensive moratorium on attacks on civilian infrastructure, including oil and gas installations. We express our readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the strait. We welcome the commitment of nations who are engaging in preparatory planning. We welcome the International Energy Agency decision to authorise a coordinated release of strategic petroleum reserves. We will take other steps to stabilise the energy markets, including working with certain producing nations to increase output. Nearly finished. We will also work to provide support for the most affected nations, including through the United Nations and the IFIS. Maritime security and freedom of navigation benefit all countries. We call on all states to respect international law and uphold the fundamental principles of international prosperity and security. Well, there is a vague threat there that, well, if nothing happens, if there isn't any de-escalation, these nations will take some sort of action, but they're not very specific. So that's the question I've got for you. What should happen here? I mean, do you regard this as an integral part of the war in Iran, and that if we sent some ships, we already have aircraft in the Gulf, but if we sent the aircraft carrier that at the moment is languishing in Portsmouth, does that tangle us up in a dispute of which we should play no part in? Or do you think, well, what have we got ships for if they're not to keep shipping lanes open? 0345 6060 973. Well, this afternoon, Donald Trump was at the Oval Office alongside one of the people who've signed this statement, the Prime Minister of Japan, and the US President again hit out at America's allies for not assisting in providing security to ships in the Strait of Hormuz.
We're defending the strait for everybody else. And then in the case of NATO, they don't want to help us defend the strait, and they're the ones that need it. But now they're getting much nicer because they're seeing my attitude. They're getting much nicer. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's too late. You know, UK wants to send aircraft carriers now. And I said, I want the aircraft carriers before the war. I don't want them after the war is won. They want to send me aircraft carriers after the war. There's practically nobody to shoot at them.
Major General Tim Cross joins me, former British Army military logistics expert whose career included serving in both wars in Iraq. Tim, thank you for coming on the programme tonight. Take us through from a military point of view, what could actually be done to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, or is it impossible for international forces to do anything?
No, I don't think it's impossible. I should say good evening, Ian. I don't think it's impossible. Let me just comment on a couple of things from your introduction. And firstly, you know, I think President Trump, we can't push him to one side. But the irony of a Japanese sitting next to him while he's talking about NATO, of course, Japan's not part of NATO. And the trick is in the title. It's a North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So what we're talking about here is potentially, to use the buzzword that's around at the time, a coalition of the willing. And whilst that statement, in one sense, is you know, as you described it, not very helpful, nonetheless, it does send a message. Now, Iran is facing an existential threat here, as they will see it. So they're not particularly interested, I doubt, in things like these statements or in diplomacy at the moment. But if you look at this from particularly our British Prime Minister's point of view, this statement could be the first step in then encouraging the UN to make some sort of comment, maybe authorize action in this international freedom of navigation. So, and that authorization would then give people like Keir Starmer the legality he wants. Now, from a military point of view, of course you can keep the straits open. You've just got to have the capability and the determination, the will to do it, and to be prepared to take on whatever needs to be taken on. So, yes, obviously deploying things like minesweepers and carriers and frigates and destroyers, etc. And yes, having the willingness to take on any of the Iranian boats that may come out, or indeed shoot down drones, etc. All of that needs to happen, and we need to have the capability to do it. But it is perfectly doable.
So why aren't these countries overtly saying to Iran, unless you keep these lanes open, we will make sure that you do?
Well, I think up to now, and I think you rightly made the point that this is the Hormuz Straits are a different issue to what's going on in inverted commas in mainland Iran. And thus far, people haven't separated those two things out. They don't want to be drawn into the campaign against Iran itself. I think, bottom line is, who knows what's going on in people's minds. But thus far, people have hoped that this thing was going to come to some sort of conclusion relatively quickly. What's been happening in the last 48 hours has made people realize that, we can't go on like this. So I do think that this is the first step in a potential process that will see assets being deployed. Now, those assets will take a while to get there. So this isn't going to resolve the problem quickly. But nonetheless, if the coalition can come together, if people are genuine about this and are prepared to deploy those assets, that will send, I think, an important message to Iran. And I think it's possible that they may pull away from what they're trying to achieve there.
Thank you very much for joining us. That's Major General Tim Cross. Well, joining me in the studio is Salman Sheikh, founder and chief executive of the diplomacy-focused consultancy organisation, the Sheikh Group, who previously directed the Brookings Doha Centre and worked extensively for the UN in the Middle East. Salman, welcome to the programme. Now, you told me just before we came on air that you've literally today come back from Qatar. Before we can move on to the Strait of Hormuz issue, what's the general mood there?
It's calm. They're going about their work professionally. They're shooting down these missiles and the drones. This was just before the hit on the gas facilities in Ras Laffan, which incidentally my father used to work at when he was advising the Qataris in the 90s. So we've seen that Qatar miracle grow. So to have something like this happen is quite a shock. Nevertheless, I think what they're most worried about is further escalation, and for this to become an all-out war in which they are fully encompassed. Right now, they focused on what they would call defensive operations to shoot these things down, rather than to engage with others, with the Iranians in a military way, and also to talk to their partners in the Gulf, all of whom have shown admirable restraint, despite the fact that the Iranians have been targeting not just the US military bases, which the Iranians say they are, but also civilian targets as well.
So I think some observers are quite surprised that not only the states which you've just mentioned, but also Saudi Arabia has been, should we say, reticent to take any escalatory action. But do you not think there will come a time when they get fed up with just taking it and will have to fight back in quite a major way? And the Saudis in particular, well, and indeed some of the Gulf states, I mean, they've got some major military hardware.
They do. And you just had to hear the Saudi foreign minister yesterday representing the views of all those Gulf states and others, and being very blunt towards the Iranians in this respect. But look, and Saudi Arabia is the swing voter here. I would say the UAE and Bahrain are much more hawkish. And some would say that, in fact, it's not a secret. A Wall Street Journal article just came out which shows that perhaps some of their land has been used for missiles directed towards Iran. But Saudi Arabia is the key swing voter. And I think they face a dilemma, the Saudis and all of them, that if they do engage militarily, this is the worst case scenario for an all-out conflict. And the damage that they will sustain will be even greater than what they've been able to push back on up till now.
Now, we're asking the question on the Strait of Hormuz in this hour. For those of us who do not have a military background or don't even have necessarily an expert knowledge of the Middle East, it seems obvious to me that if the world economy is not to sink into the abyss, the Strait of Hormuz needs to be kept open. So therefore, it shouldn't just be up to the Americans to try and ensure that happens. An international effort, separate from the main conflict, needs to be undertaken. Now, do you think diplomatically that's possible?
I think it's the only way. This is the wrong war at the wrong time. President Trump, perhaps led by Israel, has got himself into this mess. The Iranians only fight dirty. They fight asymmetrically. So it was obvious that they were going to go for the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, they did say it in terms before the war.
And they also said that they would attack these Gulf states and also expand that to hit the oil facilities, which is exactly what we're seeing playing out. So in order to reopen this, I would say there's no military solution here. I think the Americans would get themselves into a terrible mess. And you could try to open it, but then to sustain it with such a coastline is going to be extremely difficult. So to what you quoted me as saying, yes, there needs to be an international coalition which can come to some sort of an agreement based on international law, based on the law of the sea, this kind of things that you just quoted, which builds pressure on Iran. And Iran will have to respond to, I think, only one thing: international legitimacy. And that's not just these European countries or Japan or the Netherlands, which Netherlands is another one which have signed up to this. This includes a wider group of countries who are now being affected in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in Asia, as well as Europe and the United States in terms of the price of oil. It's only when we start to see that broad coalition, which I think the UK is actually working very hard behind the scenes and being quite effective at putting together with those Gulf states, are we going to see perhaps the makings of some sort of an agreement. It's not going to be satisfactory. We've now got into a situation where it's going to take quite a bit of time in order to be able to have the diplomatic agreements in place to be able to get the Iranians to play ball, where also China and I have to say Russia will also need to be a part of this. But that, to me, is the only medium to long-term way of opening up these straits.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us there. That's Salman Sheikh from the diplomacy-focused consultancy organisation, the Sheikh Group. Right, we are going to take some of your calls in a moment. Lots of text messages coming in. I don't think I've seen a single one that agrees with me yet, but the night is yet young. 0345 6060 973. It's 18 minutes past 7.
The LBC app. News your way. This is LBC.
This year at Amazon, we're increasing the electric vehicles used for deliveries across Europe to over 10,000. It's a difference you'll notice on your doorstep, where babies are made a fuss of, where we deliver footballs for kids' kickabouts, and where they deliver the football straight into next door's garden. Can they have their ball back, please? We're delivering change where it matters, on your doorstep. Based on projected delivery service partner vehicles across the UK and EU by end of 2026.
It's hard to concentrate when you can't shake a health worry. It can feel like there's a wall between you and the rest of the world. Like you can't be fully present.
Hello, AXA Health. How can I help?
If something's playing on your mind, AXA Health support line nurses and counsellors are ready to listen day or night. For cover that cares, search AXA Health Insurance. 24/7 health support line available to all members. Treatment for pre-existing conditions is not covered.
Interactive Investor would like to say welcome and thank you. Welcome to all our new investors who joined us over the past few months. And thank you to a certain competitor that decided to change their fee structure and sent them all our way. Visit Interactive Investor to see what you could save with our low flat fee. Interactive Investor. I think, therefore I. Remember, when investing, your capital is at risk.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
20 minutes past 7 on LBC. John says the priority now is to get the straits open. Doing nothing isn't an option. We're being thrown under a bus by those not willing to get involved and sort this situation out. The world economy is going to suffer severely. Well, I think that is absolutely right. We talked about this earlier in the week, in that I can foresee, and there was an interesting article by Ross Clark in the Daily Mail this morning, where he was looking at the next 6 months and how they could pan out, and came up with a real doomsday scenario. I mean, very unlike the Daily Mail to do that, obviously. But it did set you thinking, are we going back to the days of 1973 and the oil crisis there? Because I think that is a realistic possibility. Let's go to Talat in Kingswood. Hello, Talat.
Hello, Ian. I absolutely agree with the last comment. We have to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. This so-called, it was government, the Iranian terrorist regime, they will do anything to survive. Now, I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I was in Mashhad in 1979. I had an Iranian girlfriend, right? And I escaped in the early 80s when they were recruiting guys to go and fight Iraq. Over 1 million young men died. These people who are in Iran, right, they don't care for international law. They're not interested in, how can I put this, international bodies passing comments. What we need to do, and I'm appalled at the Europeans and the Japanese and what have you, they should be in there helping Trump. Trump is a victim of the tail wagging the dog. Unfortunately, we are now where we are. We need to do something, because the next stage is going to be that Trump is going to take Cargo Island. He's going to try and hold the Iran regime to ransom. They won't have any of it. They'll start unleashing missiles from the Houthis. They've got umpteen numbers of missiles still left. It makes you wonder what would have happened if Trump hadn't gone in there to try and destroy their missile caches. We need to step into this.
In what way?
Well, we need to do whatever we can. Send, boats that we got, rowing boats. That's all we got left. We need to send wherever we can. They have to. The Europeans need to do this. The French need to do this. Everyone needs to get involved in keeping the Strait open. Because if we don't do this, 3 months down the road, there'll be a quagmire with the Middle East burning and the whole world economy tanked. All due to a terrorist regime. We need to do something about it. Well, I for one, am appalled.
You say that it's all due to a terrorist regime, and in many ways you're right, but it's also due to the fact that America and Israel launched these air attacks on Iran in the first place. None of this would be happening had they not done that. Do you not look back and think, well, this was too big a risk to take for the world economy?
The world economy, in terms of the safety of the world, right, is important, but it's not the overriding principle here. The Iranians, make no mistake about this, right? The Iranians had every intention to lay nuclear weapons on Israel. They have umpteen, they've had 50-odd years nearly, to spend all their oil money, not on the population, but on building up arms. The average Persian, or Iranian, if you like to use that term, they're poor. These people have been starved economically, right? They've set the country back 50 years, this terror regime. They need to be got rid of. And to be frank with you, I'm not a fan of Netanyahu, the war criminal. But on this particular occasion, and I'm not a fan of Trump, They had the right idea. They need to cut down the threat from Iran. If they hadn't done it, 5 years down the road, it would have been a catastrophe. Would have been in a nuclear war. At this moment in time, I'm appalled. I really am embarrassed by the UK's attitude and by the Europeans sitting on the fence, doing nothing. Yet we are the ones to consume the most oil. The Americans don't need to do this. They've got their own oil. The Chinese are sitting on the fence as well. I think what we need to do is do what we can, show willing to go there and offer what we can to keep the strait open. Because the next stage is going to be the Americans are going to get even heavier. And I think that might be catastrophe because the Iranians got nothing to lose. They're clinging on by terrorizing their population. Do you know some people haven't left their flats? They can't go out in the street. They've been told if they go out in the street, they'll get shot. So what are you going to do?
Okay.
We have to do something to help the world economy. The Strait of Hormuz must be kept open at any cost.
Thank you very much to that. Let's move on to Hassan in Westminster. Hi, Hassan.
Yeah, hello. Yes, I couldn't disagree with Talal more. I think this is a war which was started. It's a war of choice started by Netanyahu and Trump. It was very ill-planned. I think the retaliation from the Iranians was predictable and had been analyzed in wargaming for years and decades, but they didn't care about that. And I find it absolutely astonishing that our generals can come on LBC and talk about, let's commit our ships there without any sort of analysis of what risk we will be taking. This is
hang on, Hassan. To be fair, it was a 4-minute interview. He wasn't going to go into every minute detail of military planning, which he wasn't even involved in.
Well, risks to ships are quite important, right? When you're predicting a particular course of action. And that is my problem with these generals. They want to rush in at the first drop of the hat. This is not our war. We did not start this war, and we should not be dragged in behind a completely reckless.
But the whole world is now involved in it, isn't it? I mean, if you close the major energy shipping route in the whole world, which the Strait of Hormuz is, then everyone becomes involved to one degree or another.
Yes, but then there is a vast difference in terms of how the Chinese are responding to the situation versus how the British want to respond to the situation. We have Starmer looking at excuses to somehow make this war legal so he can jump right in. While the Chinese...
how do you come to that conclusion? Because he's given the impression it's the exact opposite.
No, it's not the exact opposite. He has already allowed our air bases to be used for bombing raids in Tehran. Literally every day, American bombers are going and attacking. And this idea that somehow these Gulf states were completely innocent bystanders. All these American ships are flying out from those Gulf bases, attacking Iran. So we should not be surprised that Iran retaliates against these Gulf states.
So you believe that essentially nothing should be done to keep the Strait of Hormuz open?
No, I think we should put all our pressure on Trump and Netanyahu and tell them to start de-escalation. That is what we should do.
You mean concede defeat? Well, they're not going to do that, are they?
Defeat? What? Look, it's a terrible war. It was illegal, illegitimate, and completely poorly thought out. So you want us to double in behind that?
I haven't given an opinion yet. You're assuming what...
I've been hearing your program for quite a few months and years. I'm quite familiar with your opinion.
Well, on this, I just don't think that... I think we're now at a point where the war is happening, whether people in this country like it or not, it is happening. And just to simply call for de-escalation, when you know for a fact that the Iranian regime is not going to come to any agreement, because if they were going to do that, they would have done it already.
Sorry, how can you say that? I mean,
very easily.
No, but Trump continues to assassinate the leaders. How do you expect them to come to... No, good? Okay, yeah. Then the war continues. No, the problem, Ian, with you and others is that you think there is a military solution to this problem. I don't. And that's why you keep on coming up with militaristic ideas like send our ships in, etc., which I firmly oppose.
Well, I think that probably should happen now. I wouldn't have gone in with the Americans and the Israelis at the beginning, which I did say at the time, but nobody ever remembers that. But I think given that America is our major international ally, I think we should have allowed them to use the planes from our bases immediately. We hesitated in that, and we're now suffering the consequences of that with Trump. Now, I get why people don't like Trump. I get why people don't like Netanyahu. I don't like either of them either. But we have to accept that we are where we are. And to try and dream that there's some diplomatic solution to this now, it is for the birds. The Iranians are not going to agree to it. The Israelis certainly aren't, and the Americans aren't. So let's deal with facts rather than sort of wishful dreaming.
No, we need to exert pressure on people we can exert pressure on, right? And that is the US and the Israelis. Our ability to put further pressure or...
We have no means to put pressure on either of those countries now because we've forfeited the right to do that by our ridiculous diplomacy at the start of this.
Your ridiculous diplomacy would have been to concede to Trump's demands.
Yeah.
And that would have even been worse.
No, I totally disagree.
Yeah. So you think if we had joined in from day one, this would have been better?
No, I just said I don't think we should have joined in from day one. I don't think we should have had British planes bombing Tehran, but I do believe we should have let the Americans use the bases they have in this country. Yes, I do.
Look, I think that was a marginal difference, right? I think we are letting them...
I think it's a massive difference, to be fair.
Look, I think there was literally days between when we disallowed them and then we allowed them.
Yeah, 2.
So I don't think it makes much...
Yeah, 2. And what did we gain from that diplomatically? Absolutely nothing. In fact, we lost a lot.
Look, you are talking about currying favour from an unpredictable...
It's not about currying favour. No, it's not. It's about doing what allies do. And I just think Margaret Thatcher did it with Ronald Reagan, and it cost her a lot of political capital in 1986, and it would have cost Keir Starmer political capital here. But I think he's now... It's not just with America that he's lost political capital. It's with the Gulf states, it's with Cyprus, it's with all sorts of countries. You think, well, where is Britain?
Britain is the one who's actually obeyed international law and has not participated in illegal invasion just because its ally has ordered it to. That is where we are now. I'd be much rather in this position than be in a Tony Blair type war in Iraq again.
OK, well, obviously we're not going to agree, Hassan, but I don't think that came as a surprise to you, and it certainly didn't come as a surprise to me. We'll take more of your calls in just a moment. It's 7:32 on LBC News Headlines with Tim Humphrey.
Concerns around a global energy crisis are increasing after attacks on power networks from both sides of the conflict in the Middle East. President Trump says the war will be over pretty soon. Fears over rising bills have persuaded the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee to freeze the base rate of interest at 3.75%. All 9 members voted against a change. The queue to get a meningitis B vaccine at the University of Kent closed early today due to capacity reasons. It's estimated more than 100 students have been turned away, with the number of cases in the county now standing at 27. The service resumes at 9 tomorrow morning. LBC weather, cloudy in southeast Scotland and northeast England tonight, clear elsewhere and becoming chilly in places, a low of 1 degree.
You've probably been with the same energy supplier for decades. And why wouldn't you be? Loyalty matters. But lately, bigger hasn't always felt better. You've probably dealt with long waits and endless automated menus in search of someone who can actually help. Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. Our people focus on the most important thing, you. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no, just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by Which? A record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on.
Sorry. And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries, see travel differently. T's and C's apply.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:34 on LBC. On Cross Question from 8, we have Ali Milani, the chair of the Labour Muslim Network, also the co-presenter of the Politics Uncensored podcast, Gina Miller, businesswoman and political activist, Matt Warman, the former Conservative MP and digital minister, and Leon Emirali, who's an entrepreneur and former Conservative political advisor. They'll be here with me from 8 o'clock to take your calls. Interesting tweet here from Stephen, who says, America and Israel attacked Iran, so Iran decided to attack neutral countries, neutral ships, and mined international waters. If Iran threatened to dump radioactive materials in the Irish Sea, would Europe still want to do nothing? Well, I think that is an interesting point, because we sometimes lose sight of the fact that, yes, America and Israel have attacked Iran, no question about that. But to launch an attack from Iran into the Gulf states, several of whom were actually quite friendly towards Iran. You just think, what on earth are they doing that for? They say it's because America has bases in some of these countries, and that's absolutely right, they do. Okay, we'll attack those bases. Why attack hotels in Dubai, for example? I mean, that is surely indefensible. It's surely indefensible to mine international waters. That is why I think there is an impetus, a duty for the international community to respond to that. You're not going to get the Iranian regime to come to some agreement about the Strait of Hormuz, that now they've mined it. I mean, clearly that's not going to happen. And Britain should be ordering its remaining minesweepers back into the Gulf area to clear those mines. But even that hasn't been done. Let's go to Ned in Cambridge. Hello, Ned.
Hey, Ian, how are you getting on?
Hi, okay, thank you. What would you like to say?
So let's speak. Can you remind me of your central question?
Well, the central question.
I'll give my 2p.
Well, the central question is this: do you want to see our government going further than just issuing rather bland statements to help maintain oil supplies through the Strait of Hormuz?
Let's see. So I spoke to you the other day. The issue that I've got with this is we talk about the sort of political end of things. And we can talk about that for decades and for days. But the military side of things is very, very difficult. And I think this is the reason why Iran are one up and we're always going to be 2-0 down is the topography of it. So if you just even look at Wikipedia.
You mean around the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, so it's basically it's consisted by basically the Zagros Mountains on the parallels from the sort of north to southeast. They exceed over 3,000 meters, and then on the other side you've got basically a desert. It's one of the hottest places on Earth. So if you were to put anything militarily in that region to let's just say finish off the regime or regime change or whatever the excuse might be, it's incredible. It's almost like jumping over the Alps and then landing in Death Valley. So the Iraqis tried it for 8 years, it didn't work. And on the Strait of Hormuz, we've got the islands, but they don't defend. We had a Royal Navy commander on the BBC the other day, and I watched a guy, an intelligence officer from the States, saying that they don't defend this with big naval ships like World War II. They have thousands of sort of fast rib skiff boats with what have you. So if you would imagine, you would put, let's just say we put our minesweepers or our destroyers or our aircraft carrier, you got a big target, they would send 200 boats with explosives on the front, fast rib speedboats, and then fire over the top of the mountains with the drones and the hypersonic missiles and everything else that they've got at their disposal, whatever's left. You don't know where to point the guns. They've been wargaming this for decades, in the States.
Yeah, but haven't we?
Yes, and ours as well. And that's the reason why everyone's like, just don't get into that area because they know they can.
All right, well, let me put a counter to that. And look, bear in mind, I don't pretend to be a military expert, strategist, whatever, but so this is just me sort of talking off the cuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the Iranians have been wargaming what would happen if there was an American stroke Israeli air attack, and what would happen if they wanted to close the Strait of Hormuz. Absolutely sure the Iranians have been doing that. But I'm equally sure that the Pentagon has been doing that as well. I'm equally sure that the MOD has been doing that as well. I'm equally sure that the Israeli military have been doing that. So, yes, you're absolutely right that this myriad of small boats carrying bombs would be an absolute risk. But I would like to think that the international community has got an answer to that. Now, I don't know if they have or not, but I'm kind of assuming that there must be some strategy.
Well, you've kind of answered your own question, because essentially, if somebody in the White House has dropped a testicle, dare I say, and they've done this for years. This is the reason why we're not committing. Why France isn't committing, or Germany, or anything else, apart from all sort of the political thing, it's an absolute suicide show. And then we've got this that Strait of Hormuz has been a tactical thing, like the Panama Canal or anything else. Is that they've got a stronghold on it, they can't defend against it, and we're not. What Donald Trump is asking us to say is like, just can you put your stuff in front of ours? To just get me out of a bind.
No, I don't think he is saying that. I think he's saying, look, this is a major problem. We want our allies' help, and so far they're not willing to provide it.
But for what reason? Because they know, it's like, well, it's either we don't like Donald Trump, which is, well, true, but diplomatically, but simply it's a suicide mission, and they know that. They know that we don't get involved in the same way we didn't get involved with Vietnam or Korea or whatever it might be. So he's begging for help after the fact without consulting us. And what I also noticed was that there's a sort of thing about international law was going to be disregarded because of Iran, and now everyone wants to regard it. So which one is it? But seriously,
well, I think we need to understand that people can accuse America and Israel of breaking international law, and these are usually by people who know damn all about international law. But it is quite clear that Iran has broken international law. They've certainly broken maritime law by mining international waters.
And who enforces it? This is the question, isn't it?
Well, indeed.
Who enforces it? When we spoke last time, I said, and we agreed that, where's the Saudis? Where's the Qataris? They've been selling them weapons, from the States for decades. And he thought, well, it's kind of there in their backyard. Why don't they step in? And wouldn't it be an amazing thing? But the reason why, I promise you this, no one wants to get involved in that strait is it's basically we're just putting a target for bombs. And we're not prepared to lose the service people.
Okay. All right, Ned, thank you very much indeed. Well, on that last point, Jan and one or two others have said, you'd happily risk the lives of our sailors because of an illegal war. Sounds familiar. I don't happily risk the lives of anyone, but anybody that signs up for the armed forces knows that at some point they may well be deployed to a war zone, and that involves risking their lives. People do that knowing full well the consequences. I don't want to see a single service personnel member of the British Armed Forces lose their lives. But there are times, when as a country you have to stand up and do the right thing. And people can talk about breaking international law and what's happening over Iran. But let's also remember that international shipping lanes ought to be sacrosanct, and they should not be mined by the Iranians to prevent ships going through them. And I think that Britain and other countries, not Britain alone, I'm not suggesting that Britain should get involved alone, and I'm not suggesting that Britain should get involved in the bombing raids that America and Israel are conducting over Tehran and other areas of Iran. But I am suggesting that as a member of the international community, we do have a duty to protect international shipping lanes. And if we say, no, we're not going to do that, then we do have open season all over the world on international shipping lanes, and we should be very prepared for the economic consequences of that. Now, we heard a little of what Donald Trump said in the Oval Office earlier while he was sat next to the Japanese Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi. Well, the president was also, wait for this, pin your ears back because this is unbelievable what you're about to hear. The president was also asked about the US not having alerted their allies, like Japan, that they were going to attack Iran prior to the beginning of this war. This is how he replied. And let me remind you again, he was sat next to the new Prime Minister of Japan.
One thing you don't want to signal too much, when we go in, we went in very hard and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? These Escobie. No, you believe in surprise, I think, much more so than us.
Now, if you were compiling a top 10 list of diplomatic insults, that would have to rate quite high, wouldn't it? I could not believe what I was hearing. I don't know what the Japanese tabloids are going to say about that tomorrow. Assuming there are such things as tabloids in Japan, but it's not going to be pretty for President Trump, is it? Right, lots more calls to come. I'm going to be quite honest. Very few of you are agreeing with me on the text and WhatsApp messages. I'll read out some more of those in a moment as well. But look, I'll give my honest view and feel free to disagree with it. It's 7:45.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Meningitis. Your questions answered on LBC.
I'm a student at a university in London. Can I get a vaccine?
Do I need to wear a face mask?
I've got a rash on my chest. Does that mean I have meningitis?
Meningitis. Ask the experts tomorrow morning with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Whether your dreams are calling you outdoors to reconnect with nature or towards moments of pampering and relaxation to rejuvenate your soul, you can bank on Lloyds to help make it happen. We've been asking listeners what their aspirations are for the year ahead to help create the ultimate prize packages to inspire that first step. Enter now for your chance to win one of 3 incredible experiences thanks to Lloyds and the nation's aspirations. Choose the prize for you at lbc.co.uk.
A spectacle far beyond your imagination. Be amazed. Be moved. Be there. For an experience that will stay with you forever. Disney's The Lion King at London's Lyceum Theatre. Book now at thelionking.co.uk.
If you owned a diesel Nissan, Renault, Jaguar or Land Rover built between 2009 and 2020, you could be entitled to compensation. Checking takes minutes at jointheclaim.com, and if successful, compensation could be worth thousands. Don't miss out. You could be among the millions of drivers across the UK bringing diesel emissions claims. Check now at jointheclaim.com.
Join the claim!
Eligibility criteria apply and any compensation may vary.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, bower leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
7:47. Deborah's a new caller in Harrow. Hi, Deborah.
Oh, hello, Ian. Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I'm not sure I completely agree with your opinion.
You are not alone.
I would just like to say that before America bombed Iran, and I'm not a fan or anything of that of Iran, but before they bombed Iran, the Strait of Hormuz was open. Shipping lanes were open, oil was moving freely, etc. And now it's not. And my son's in the army, and I'm not sure that I feel very comfortable with him being catapulted into a war situation that really wasn't instigated by Britain and has nothing to do with us.
Well, first of all, no one's suggesting the army should be deployed. I think the only suggestion is that the Navy and the Air Force should be. Second of all, it now does have something to do with us because the Strait of Hormuz is being closed and that directly affects us.
I understand that, but why? It wasn't beforehand. It's now closed and in a predicament because of what America did.
So we just sort of sit there and do nothing along with every other country?
I don't think it's about sitting there and doing nothing. I think it's about deciding if we're going to have a backbone and stand up to President Trump.
So basically give in to the Iranian regime?
No, I don't think it's that at all.
Well, it is. They've mined international waters. I mean, I regard this as rather separate to... I mean, you're right in saying, well, this wouldn't have happened had America not done what it did. But the fact is, Iran has broken... And if we're talking about international law, it is quite clear that mining international waters breaks international and maritime law. So if a major maritime nation like Britain, bear in mind we're the home of the International Maritime Organization, which is literally situated about 200 yards across the Thames from where I'm sitting now, if we are considered to be still a maritime power, how can we possibly just sit there and accept that and do nothing?
Because international law seems to not mean very much these days. I mean, going back to Israel and, a lot of organisations believe that they have broken international law.
Yeah, but it is arguable as to whether Israel and America have broken international law. We can argue about the meaning of imminent threat. I think there was an imminent threat to Israel. I think the imminent threat to America is more arguable. But there is no question here that Iran has broken international law by mining international waters. Would you not agree with that?
I do agree with that, but they wouldn't have done it had Israel and America...
That's whataboutery. That's not an argument.
Okay, I can't argue with that.
I mean...
But no, I don't agree with you at all, because it's like,
Well, look, every country in this situation...
There is not evidence that there was an imminent threat.
Well, there certainly is for Israel. Because, I mean, Iran has been bombing Israel ever since Israel reacted to what happened on the 7th of October. There have been missiles coming in from Iran and being also retaliated by Israel, and I can't blame them for that. And we know that Iran was financing Hezbollah. We know that Iran was financing Hamas. We know that Iran is financing the Houthis. So, I mean, there are all sorts of threats, particularly to Israel, for that. But, I mean, we're sticking to the Strait of Hormuz here. Deborah, thank you very much. James is in Gravesend. Hello, James.
Good evening, Iain.
Hi.
And I notice that not many people are agreeing with you.
Well,
perhaps I can change that.
Well, I'm not. I don't mind whether you agree with me or not, James.
No,
I'm here to give my opinion, and I encourage people to challenge it.
I understand the reasoning why we didn't want to get involved directly at the beginning. I think not allowing America to take offensive action from from their air bases, which are on our soil, I believe that was a strategic error on the part of the British government. But I understand that there was a revolt in the cabinet headed by Miliband, Lammy and Cooper, and the Prime Minister gave way. I understand that, okay? Right. So when events on the battlefield changes, you have to change your strategy. Now, the events have changed with Iran closing an internationally recognized waterway, which is the Straits of Hormuz, and mining it. Now, that tells me we have to change our strategy because of that.
Correct.
So we have to get involved. Otherwise, the Ayatollah, the despotic evil regime in Tehran ultimately hold the world to ransom.
Correct.
And they should not be allowed to do that. And it's no good saying, well, it wouldn't have happened if Trump hadn't admitted. Okay. But let's be honest about it. We have seen ships being hijacked in the Straits of Hormuz by the IRGC and taken into Iranian territorial waters and held for ransom. No different to what the pirates in Somalia were doing.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, no different. And these people who are saying, oh, we should sit back and do nothing, they are so naive. So naive. And it's time that our political leaders and European leaders should grow a spine and do what needs to be done.
Well, I'm going to agree with you, James, and I'm going to leave it there because we've only got 6 minutes in the hour left, and I want to get on more people who disagree with me. Christoph is in Wembley Park. Hello, Christoph.
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
Thanks. Interesting. You said to Hassan, I think, words to the effect that a diplomatic solution is just wishful thinking and is for the birds. Well, from my understanding, I am going to claim that right now, in the present circumstances, a military solution, a totally military solution, is also probably for the birds. Think about this, Ian. Ukraine is a country that barely had a navy. It has humiliated the Russian Navy in the Black Sea, right? Now, President Trump said he's destroyed all of the Iran's Navy. But I think Iran right now is in a position to humiliate any Navy that tried to keep the Straits of Hormuz open. And then we would just be back in the same situation, i.e. the Straits of Hormuz would still be shut, and our neighbours would be humiliated, and we'd be in an even worse situation. And so, answer this.
No, well, let me just reply to that first.
Yeah.
Are you saying that you think that if the combined naval forces of the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Japan, Netherlands and Italy, are you saying that you think that the Iranians are in a position to defeat those combined forces in the Strait of Hormuz?
I'm not saying that I know that for certain.
No, and I'm not saying that would necessarily be the case or not. But it's funny how you ask people to stick to facts, but then you actually said something like, "Oh, I assume that we've been wargaming this," and you might be right. Well, I mean, I can only assume that because I can't say I know for a fact. But you'd like to think that they have been wargaming it.
And I think they might well have come to the conclusion that without some significant technological innovation on the military side, and I think there might be some of that coming. Hopefully not too distant future, and maybe Major Tim Cross knows about it, although he wasn't being very specific. We probably can't actually do very much right now. You're doing what you
accuse me of. You're saying probably, you think, and that's all I can say.
But Tim Cross, he noticed he wasn't very specific. He said we should be doing something. So I have to assume that because he's made. I have to assume.
See what you did there?
No. But listen, he's a military person. Neither you or I are. Okay.
Correct.
So he made some statement, but he wasn't specific. And the technologies I'm talking about are sort of things I've seen various YouTube episodes about sort of laser technology that can shoot drones, and of course Ukraine actually is very, they've developed their own kinetic technologies for bringing down drones. But right now, because of, I just want to make 2 points.
Well, actually, Christoph, I'm not going to let you, I'm afraid, not because I want to cut you off, but we're running out of time. Dave in Barnet has been waiting for quite a long time, so I hope you will forgive me for moving on to him. Dave, we haven't got long. Fire away.
Yeah, quick one, Ian. Number one, I think we keep skipping over the fact Iran didn't start this war. Yeah, we have no proof of an imminent threat. Yeah, we want to base things on facts. We've listened to everything what Israel says. They've not allowed none of our reporters in or nothing. Just take their word. Now, earlier on, Ian, you also mentioned about being an ally of America. You played a clip a minute ago from the White House where he says basically we went in by ourselves. We don't need to tell anybody what we're doing. But you expect us just to follow him through whatever he does.
No, I don't.
No, but Ian, bearing in mind, this war's not even over. He says, well, Cuba's next. Are we going to follow him into Cuba as well? Where do we draw the line, Ian?
Well, we did draw the line at not allowing them to use spaces for all of 2 days.
To that, yeah, because the next war, he's already said Cuba. So as an ally, Ian, do we just follow him?
I don't think Cuba would have anything to do with this country.
No, but what he said, Ian, he's going in.
I know, and this is why I keep saying, look, I have made very clear for the last 10 years, I would have voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I would have voted for Kamala Harris in the last presidential election. I hold no candle for Donald Trump. But it's pointless just sort of virtue signalling, we hate Donald Trump, so therefore we must break off our alliance with the United States.
Him into these wars, Ian.
Pardon?
We need to stop.
Well, we are not a participant in this war. We didn't go in with the Americans and the Israelis.
We should stop it. If something is wrong, Ian, we shouldn't just go in because we're an ally, Ian. If something is wrong, Stop it.
But the Strait of Hormuz issue is very different here. They've mined international waters, and if we have any reputation as an international maritime nation, then all I'm saying is that as part of a concerted international effort, the Iranians need to be stopped, and we need to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. That is all I'm saying, but it seems to be falling on quite a few deaf ears. People like Stephen, who says, so Iain's plan is all-out war with Iran. Please ask him to explain how this will play out. Well, if I had suggested that, I'd happily explain it. But given that I haven't even given a hint that I want all-out war with Iran, give your head a shake, Stephen. Right, coming up on Cross Question, we have Ali Milani, chair of the Labour Muslim Network, Gina Miller, businesswoman and political activist, Matt Warman, the former Conservative MP and digital minister, and Leon Emirali, an entrepreneur who's a former Conservative political advisor. The number to call if you'd like to put a question to them, I suspect that this might feature in this hour. The Brexit reset might feature, which Rachel Reeves seems intent on. I'm sure Gina Miller will have a view on that. The number to call 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, and of course you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Bank of England held the base rate of interest at 3.75%. Inflation forecasts have shot up because of the Middle East conflict. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey's told LBC energy costs are the main factor.
In the UK, that comes through immediately into obviously things like prices at the pump. It will, particularly in the summer, it will come through into household energy prices because of the way the Ofgem cap process sets. That will most likely go up.
Benjamin Netanyahu says the Middle East has changed beyond recognition. Israel's Prime Minister's held a news briefing saying Iran is weaker than ever.
We are winning and Iran is being decimated. Iran's air defenses have been rendered useless. Their navy is lying at the bottom of the sea. Their air force is nearly destroyed. Iran's command and control structure is in utter chaos. And I can tell you that there's still more work to do, and we're going to do it.
He also confirmed Israel acted alone in striking an Iranian gas compound. A report's found stay-at-home slogans during the COVID pandemic wrongly sent the message that the NHS was closed. The third part of the inquiries concluded the UK's healthcare systems came close to collapse. And a standard UK passport is to cost more than £100. Fees for online applications are going up by 8% next month. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 242 points at 10,063. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather, cloudy in southeast Scotland and northeast England tonight, clear elsewhere, a low of 1 degree. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, very good evening. It's 8 on LBC. Well, we had quite a confrontational hour in the last hour. I wonder if Cross Question is going to be equally as feisty. Ali Milani is here. He's sitting to my left. He's chair of the Labour Muslim Network, also the co-presenter of the Politics Uncensored podcast. Next to me, making his debut on the programme, is Leon Emirali, an entrepreneur who's a former Conservative political advisor. To my right, Gina Miller, businesswoman and political activist. And to her right, Matt Warman, former Conservative MP and digital minister. They are here to answer your questions. The number to call 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850. And of course, we'd love you to watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, it's time to go to our first caller. It's Jeff in Merthyr Tydfil. Hello, Jeff.
Hiya there. That was Iain. I've got a question for your erudite panel.
Well, we don't know if they're erudite yet. They haven't spoken.
What would they do to solve the problem of the Straits of Hormuz, diplomatically or militarily? What would each one of them do?
Well, we've had this statement this afternoon from 6 countries, including the UK, which I thought was pretty bland, didn't really say or threaten anything. Gina Miller, let's start with you.
Oh, thanks.
Well, someone has to start.
I think it's much more than the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, that's like a shooting gallery. It's such a narrow stretch of water and so important. But I think it's now gotten way beyond just the Strait of Hormuz. I think it is time for us to go back around the diplomatic table, because this is getting totally out of control. They're talking about hitting desalination plants as well as ports and, South Paris, which is... and it's now to a stage where I don't believe that there was ever any plan from Trump anyway. And what's really shocking is that the advisors who were there in his first term are no longer around him. So who stops him? Where does this go? Where is the exit plan? I don't think there is one. And I really don't believe that Israel and Trump, or Netanyahu and Trump, have the same goals. And so I think this is now hitting globally to such an extent. And I can only see now diplomatic action.
But do you
not, the diplomacy being
do you not
place.
think that the fact that Iran has now mined international waters, I mean, that is a clear breach. I mean, whatever you think about the illegality or not of the main conflict, mining international waters is very different. And as an international maritime power, surely Britain and other countries have a responsibility to keep international sea lanes open.
They have got a responsibility to do that. But then what does that then lead to? What's the next step? Where do we go? Because actually, as I said, there's now talk of the desalination plants. So if they did that and they did strike that, that's against the Geneva Convention, the international rules-based order. Not that anybody seems to bother about rules-based order anymore. But at some point, we have to step back and look at the bigger picture. What is the exit strategy? What does this mean, not just for the Middle East, but us globally?
But do you believe that Iran is interested in a diplomatic solution?
Well, from the people who seem to have been there around the table and have the inside track of what was going on, they said that the diplomatic talks were actually going in the right direction before this strike.
Okay, Matt Warman.
So that may be true, that the diplomatic talks were going in the right direction, but I think the reality is now the people who are around that table are not around that table anymore. And I think we are probably trapped into a cycle of escalation for now. And I think that is a very, very bad place for all of us to be, whether you are after fertilizer and worried about the price of food, whether you're worried about the price of oil, whether you run a data center and you need helium, it all comes through the Straits of Hormuz. So there is a lot of consequence to work through. And I think that my fear is, it's a great question, what should we do? The reality is, I don't think there is a straight answer that anyone had at the beginning of this for what is their ambition. And right now, I think the reality is you've got an increasingly fractured and fragmented Iran that is very, very hard to have any negotiation with, even if the Americans and the Israelis wanted to. And you've got an Israel and an America that is clearly going to pursue this to a point that is way further than diplomacy permits. So I think it's the question that everyone wants an answer to, but good luck coming up with one.
Do you not think, though, and I got into, shall we say, a little bit of an argument in the last hour where I suggested that this closing the Strait of Hormuz should have been foreseeable, that in the Pentagon they must have wargamed what would Iran do if there was an aerial attack. One of the consequences, inevitable, and the Iranians were very open about this, said we will close the Strait of Hormuz. So
but apparently there was no wargaming.
Well, okay. Well, if there wasn't wargaming in the Pentagon, surely there was in the Ministry of Defence in this country. Surely there was in whatever the equivalent is in France. I mean, somebody somewhere surely must have been thinking, well, okay, well, if they do that, what do we do? I mean, that's what you have people in the Ministry of Defence for.
You don't have to be the most sophisticated wargamer to think that the Straits of Hormuz could be closed. And so it is obvious, I think, at this point that if Iran is going to take the approach that it is taking, there are very few options for anyone other than to continue down a military course to get to the point where it cannot happen. And that's why, as you said at the beginning, Britain has to think very seriously about what are our duties as a maritime power. The Americans obviously are going to continue, and Trump has said they're going to continue to be very, very aggressive to try and pursue this to a point where Iran is decimated. Now, that is bad for all of us, and it is going to take a long time. But I do have a small amount of sympathy in the sense that we are now where we are, and it cannot be acceptable for those straits to be closed at the behest of Iran themselves.
Okay, Ali Milani.
You know what's really alarming is exactly what you said. This is exactly what Iran said they would do. I watched a clip of Donald Trump in the White House or somewhere on Capitol Hill saying, we didn't expect them to attack the Gulf countries. We didn't expect them to do any of this. They caught us by surprise. This is exactly what they said they would do, right? Everything from the Strait of Hormuz to the bombing of the Gulf countries is exactly what they said they would do. And I would say it would be seriously foolish for anyone to to join the Americans and the Israelis in this sort of path of escalation. The only route we have...
The Straits of Hormuz bit would not... I mean, I know you may say, well, I'm splitting hairs, and I probably am, but that's not the major conflict. This is... I think this has to be seen in a very different light in terms of closing an international waterway, which will affect the world economy.
Yeah, but that's an escalation that the Iranians have a sort of button that they've pushed following other attacks, including an attack on a school, which was against international law, which the Americans have now said, oops, about the most sophisticated military in the world. Apparently their GPS system didn't quite work on that day. I don't think an escalation route. I think what we have to do is use all diplomatic powers within our disposal to end this war. And I actually think Donald Trump...
We have none. We have no influence,
so we have no
on
influence
Donald
on the
Trump.
United States.
I don't think we do. No,
okay,
and I think because we abrogated that the day that Keir Starmer said you can't use our air bases, that was endgame.
Yeah, but the point is, on that, the war was illegal, in my view, right? The war was unnecessary in anyone's view who has looked at what the Omanis said, and I think Gina's right. The Omanis were very, very clear that progress was being made on a nuclear deal. In fact, if we're really honest about it, the Iranians signed JCPOA, as we all, and Trump is the one that unilaterally pulled out. I am not comfortable sending British soldiers to die for a war that Donald Trump started that was unnecessary and illegal. The European partners, for one, must have the power to push the Americans in some way, shape or form to bring an end to this war. And I actually believe Donald Trump wants this war to end because I think he thought he was getting into Venezuela. He thought Venezuela went so well, right, in their view. We got in and got out so quickly. I'm the next Ronald Reagan. I can do whatever I want. And I think he thought Iran would be over by now. More fool him.
Leon?
I agree with that. I think Trump thought it was going to be easier than it was, and I think that's probably why the wargaming wasn't as advanced as it could have been. However, at the beginning of this conflict, the rationale for getting involved was fairly abstract. Is Iran a threat to the global order? Yes, probably on reflection. Is that enough for the UK to be involved militarily? Maybe not. Now, it is in the UK's interests to use our military power, of what we've got left of it, to make sure that the Strait of Hormuz is accessible for gas, for oil, for all the other goods that are passing through it, because British people are feeling it every time they go to fill up their car, and we're soon going to be feeling it every time we turn on our heating and turn on our electricity. So there is no argument that it is not in British interests anymore for us to use our military power where it's available to be able to secure the Strait of Hormuz, so we can have those vital goods passing through it that impacts us here at home.
And God forbid a British soldier dies as a result of Netanyahu and Trump's war.
Well, God forbid indeed. That's not what anyone wants, obviously. But we are involved in that now. We're involved in it now.
I mean, as I said to someone in the last hour and got a lot of abuse for it, when people sign up to the armed forces, they know what's likely to happen. They may well be sent into a war zone.
No, I agree with that.
It's a bit virtue signalling.
No, but a war that our country starts and is in our interest. Now, you may disagree.
But it is in our interest. But it is in our interest to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, isn't it?
It is in our interest to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, but it's about what path we take to do that, whether, first of all, we think we can do that, how much risk is put in place, right? I agree. But also, we have to recognize, I think we have to get out of this paradigm that the United States and us have this great relationship and that But
we clearly don't anymore.
We clearly don't, right? So what other routes, diplomatic... I mean, this is going to end diplomatically.
Ali, I think you're living on a different planet because there aren't any diplomatic routes open to us at all. What we saw today from Starmer and Macron and the others that signed this statement was not worth the paper it was written on. It was just to placate Trump.
No, look, the reality, the Iranians will want to negotiate because they're getting pummeled, right? I think Donald Trump wants a way out of here because he clearly, I mean, who knows whether it's all shooting up there, but he clearly wants a way out of this as well. There must be a path that European powers together can find an off-ramp for Trump, is what my view is. There can't be one, because the Iranians definitely want to negotiate. There's no way that they don't. And there's no way that Donald Trump, with his MAGA base in complete tatters, because they don't want another forever war, there's not an off-ramp here. There has to be an off-ramp here.
So I think the problem is there is no sign that the Iranians want to negotiate. You don't mind the Straits of Hormuz.
Well, they've actually said they don't mind. But
exactly.
They would say that in a war.
Yeah, but getting back to the point of Trump wanting an off-ramp, he has changed his mind a lot of it, and he needs to. I mean, it makes no sense to have this war as you go into the midterms.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Well, he thought it would be over quickly.
Well, yes. Well, that's Hesketh, the warmonger, who said that.
If and this could still happen. I mean, if the regime had imploded, and if it does implode, and there's a more moderate regime that follows it, he could point at the midterm and say, well, look what I've achieved. Now, at the moment, does that look likely? Probably not.
But because they don't understand the structure of Iran.
Yeah, and anyone who's read 2 books about Iran would have told you that's never going to happen. You are not going to change the regime from the air above. It's never going to happen because there is no real opposition on the ground in Iran. The only real opposition you see is some clown whose dad was Shah once. Like, that's the only real opposition, and that's for online folks.
This is actually really important, because I think initially Trump's messaging was all about, to the Iranian people, now is your time to stand up and take control of the government.
Yeah, first
that
speech
hasn't happened. And I think this
he didn't say that. He said when the bombing stops, that's the time when we want
that was
you
the
to
second
rise
speech.
up.
In his first speech, he said, take back your country, you're never going to get an opportunity and get it. In the first speech, that's what he said. In the second speech, he said, wait for the bombing to stop. Yeah. But he clearly thought...
So we're both right.
He clearly thought Khamenei would die, and that would give the people the impetus to get out onto the streets, and they'd be able to topple the regime. We're here now, 2,000 people dead in Iran, multiple in the Gulf cities. The Strait of Hormuz closed. Over $20 billion has been spent. Military personnel on all sides has died. And what have they done? They've cut Khamenei's age from 86 to 56. That's all that's happened. We've just made him younger.
And the proxies have been quite quiet, haven't they? They've still got their proxies who haven't really been activated, if you like, in this war.
I mean, maybe we should be talking to Netanyahu. Clearly, he's the one who pushed this.
Well, we have no relations with Netanyahu.
I mean, it's good not to have relationships with war criminals. You knew I was going to say that.
Yes.
17 minutes past 8.
LBC.
Amazon offers term time working to their employees, like Anton, who's home to look after his daughters during their holidays.
Hello?
To him, this is the best sound in the world. Actually, maybe that's the best sound of all. Now that's term time working, offered at Amazon. 10 weeks off guaranteed per year, mix of paid holiday and unpaid time off. Conditions apply.
OK, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life?
We're doing Pretty Muddy.
It's an obstacle course.
There's one for kids.
Runners.
Walkers.
Book clubbers.
Knit clubbers.
10-pin bowlers.
Quiet singers.
Lake swimmers.
Gardeners.
Whether you climb it,
slide it,
or crawl it.
Go all in against cancer.
All in to help fund life-saving research.
Sign up now
to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Get that Toyota electric feeling with the all-new, all-electric Toyota Urban Cruiser. Available with 0% APR representative and £1,500 deposit contribution. And save £1,500 with the Toyota Electrified Saving. Visit your nearest Toyota centre. Price from $29995. Available on Toyota PCP when financed through Toyota Financial Services by 30th of June 2026. Optional final payment. Indemnities may be required. See website conditions apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Yeah, exactly.
Saying about the structure.
It's 18 minutes past 8. We've been carrying on the debate in the break here, and we're going to go to a different subject now. We have Ali Milani with us, chair of the Labour Muslim Network. He's going to be interested in the next question. We all are, hopefully. Gina Miller, businesswoman and political activist. Matt Warman, former Conservative minister. And Leon Emirali, former Conservative political advisor. Adam in Bathgate is on the line. Adam, what would you like to ask?
Hi. First of all, good evening to everybody. Long-time listener, first-time caller, so this is very exciting for me.
It's very exciting for us.
Just curious, in light of Kemi Badenoch's defence of of the Shadow Justice Secretary's comment about the iftar celebration. How does the panel feel about her defence? Do they agree with it? And where do they feel this leaves the Conservative Party ultimately?
Right, well, the Conservative leader has told LBC that the open iftar prayer event in Trafalgar Square was not welcoming and that women were pushed to the back, making clear that she backs Nick Timothy when the Shadow Justice Secretary described it as an act of domination. Guess what? I'm going to go to Ali first.
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to join you on the evening of Eid here today. I don't know, is this an act of domination, me being here, or am I all right?
Well, you're dominating so far.
Fair enough.
I'm going to be called an Islamophobe.
No, I give him a pass if you want to call him Islamophobe. Look, there's no secret that Nick Timothy has a rabid, unhealthy obsession with Muslims. Anyone who just logs onto his Twitter account will see that this guy wakes up thinking about us and goes to sleep thinking about us. He's pretty rabidly obsessed, and in an unhealthy way. And what he said was patently absurd, deeply offensive and bigoted, in my view. Kemi Badenoch and the Conservative Party chairman, who's also backed it now, are just doing a really poor pound-shop impression of reform because they don't know where else to go politically. The reality is there are a group of people, and it's not just Nick Timothy, people like Claire Coutinho and others, who don't have an answer to the problems, right? So they need your listeners to hate something and hate someone, to fear something and fear someone, and they've chosen that Muslims are going to be that. This Trafalgar Square event, which I was
genuinely think that is a clear strategy.
They are so talentless and so depth of, they have no ideas that they have. The only thing politically that they can do to make a name for themselves or to get the public to vote for them is they have to hate someone and fear something. I genuinely think that's what's happening here. Because if you look at this Trafalgar Square event that I was at, first they called it exclusive. It wasn't. It was ticketed for safety reasons. Then they said it was an act of domination. There are events that happen in Trafalgar Square, including the celebration of Hanukkah, the celebration of Diwali, Christian prayers. We had Easter celebrations there. It is absolutely consistent with the values of this country and this city for us to celebrate all faiths that come here and all faiths of British citizens that live and love and celebrate and prosper, hopefully, here. But what's happening is you've got a class of politicians who have nothing else to do but to sort of spread bigotry for their own political careers. And you've got Kemi Badenoch and the like, who are so politically snookered and so irrelevant that they have to do a really, really poor pound-shop reform and Farage and Rupert Lowe impression.
This act of domination phrase, which everyone's picked up on, is that in the Quran or not?
No, of course. The prayer was putting your forehead on the ground. I don't know if you've ever seen acts of domination around the world, but it doesn't quite include putting your forehead on the ground. And by the way, if you'd come to the event, it was full of Jewish people, Christian people, people of no faith, all of whom, quite a few came for the free food, right? I'm Muslim and I might have gone for the free food.
Right. Well, you videoed the event, and I mean, it was really as a result of your video that this has blown up into a big row,
Listen,
isn't it?
it may have been my video, right? So,
you little troublemaker, you.
That was the act of domination.
But were women pushed to the back?
No, look, women were, first of all, so just traditional in the Islamic prayer, women and women pray behind men.
Why?
Because
how very patriarchal of you.
Well, no, it's actually Orthodox Jews are the same.
That doesn't make it right.
No, it's because of the nature of the prayer. It's not always the case. In Mecca, I prayed side by side with women, for example, because the Kaaba is
in a mosque,
in front of you.
It's men only on the ground floor and the women are somewhere on the balcony.
That's not true. There are different men and women section, again, as there are in other faiths as well, but it's not always men behind women or women behind men. And it's certainly not true in mosques. There are just specific sections that are men and women based.
That kind of makes it true.
What?
Why would you?
Not behind any.
I mean, why would you split up men and women?
It's part of the Islamic doctrine. You'd have to get a scholar on here to answer that question.
Well, we've only got you at the moment.
Well, I'm not quite running for head imam.
Well, don't rule it out.
I'm not ruling it out. I'm still in the race.
Leon, I mean, Ali has made some pretty sharp accusations against the party that you used to advise.
Yeah, look, I don't think Nick Timothy's comments were very well judged. I think some of that language is not helpful. But the broader point that's being made, which I think is worth discussing, which Iain was alluding to in that interaction with you, Ali, which is, is there an issue with the way in which Islam as a religion is compatible with what we see as British values. And that is what Kemi was saying, was it a couple of weeks ago, when she spoke about the need to prioritise British culture, British values. And I think that religion playing a part in that, be it Christianity, Judaism, Islam, whatever, is not necessarily what we want to, what's healthy for a cohesive
And your own Prime
society.
Minister kind of agrees with that, when he talks about islands of strangers.
No, but this is... you're not going to get me to defend Keir Starmer on the show. This isn't a question about the role that Islam plays in the state. This was a non-political celebration of the fact that Muslims exist in the city.
And I don't have an issue with what went on in Trafalgar Square. I don't think many people would, but it's the broader point, right? And that's what Nick Timothy was trying to do. I think.
No, he wasn't.
Was make a broader point.
He wasn't making a broad point because he said it's an act of domination, and he said it's straight out of the Islamist playbook. It's neither of those things. Well, both of those things are a lie.
But fine. But and as I said, I don't think his language was helpful in this instance. But there is that broader point that a lot of people listening
you might
to
be making the broader point, but he's not.
Well, fine. But let me make it then.
Okay.
But I think that ultimately the question that people will be asking is, why do we have to have these moments of religion that seem to be more dominant, to use that language, than others? And is that helpful towards creating a cohesive society that gets along side by side, that feels cohesive, feels part of the national story, the national picture? Or does it feel like we're just a bunch of different groups segregated by our own identity, our own culture, religion, whatever it might be? And that's why we're in such a state where the country it feels like it's tearing each other apart. And I think Kemi's addressing and diagnosing an issue which needs to be tackled.
Why did they never say that about Diwali or Hanukkah or
I was
Easter?
just going to say that.
Why is it only Muslims?
Well, I'm sure there are many people that have got issues with those events as well. I'm not saying that they should have.
Yeah, but Ali hasn't been to film those.
That's
Matt.
So look, I mean, I agree with Leon. These are not the kind of language not the kind of words I would want to use. I don't think this is the ground that the Tory party should be fighting the election on. But I think it is obviously true that Nick Timothy is trying to make a broader point. He's trying to talk about whether we live in a functional, integrated society, and he is. You're right, absolutely, focusing particularly on Islamism as opposed to Muslims as a whole.
What was Islamist about that event?
So that is exactly what I was about to say. I think there is a danger in conflating what is an event analogous to Hanukkah, to Diwali, to whatever that has happened in Trafalgar Square and places up and down the country for many, many years with something that is threatening.
What he could have said was that this is a brilliant example of integration, where we have Trafalgar Square used by every single religion. This day, the last day of Ramadan. I mean, why wouldn't?
But it's not the point. It's the language. You've got somebody who is in a position of power, who is not making considered comments as you are, commentators, my fellow guests are making here. He pointedly made a very divisive, hateful comment. And that is the problem I have with all of this, is that, and I agree with Ali this, when you have nothing else to say, they say something hateful because it then gets some attention. And that's not what people in positions of political power should be doing.
So we've fallen for it.
And we've fallen for it. And that's so disappointing because it's such an easy bait to put out there and media fall for it. We should be discarding this and we should be talking exactly as you've just said, that Trafalgar Square is a symbol of what brings us together as a nation, that different cultures can come and celebrate their special days, and it's open for everyone to come, be it Hanukkah, being Diwali, being, whatever the situation is.
Can I play devil's advocate now?
Of course.
Because, he was quoting words which are used in the Quran. This word domination, there is a sentence which basically says Islam needs to dominate other religions, or words to that effect.
Well, the fact is, I don't know the Quran. I'm a Christian. I've not read the Quran. But if it says that, then that's something that we have to talk about interpretation. If you look at the Bible and some of the things that the Bible says in it, you would not interpret them literally, would you? Or any religious book, especially the Old Testament.
I think you can also look at what's the purpose of the event, right? Is that it is clearly not, to me, an attempt to impose a religion on London or even Trafalgar Square at that moment. You've got to sort of say, what is the purpose of this stuff? And I think in this case, the purpose is, as you say, to demonstrate really good integration across London. It's Sadiq Khan saying, look at this amazing, diverse, wonderful city. I think, if anything, what we're falling for is the fact that we've got a social media that is rewarding incredibly divisive, incredibly extreme positions, and that's become the level of the debate. If we want to have a meaningful debate, we should be talking about integration.
Well, and the tragedy is that selfie that Sadiq Khan took, sort of with all the people in the background, that will be used by Donald Trump as proof that London is now an Islamist city, won't it? I mean, that's the tragedy of this.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump could do what he wants, right? Donald Trump said something remarkable about Japan today.
Well, didn't he just?
Yeah, he's clearly someone where the lift doesn't go to the top floor. We don't need to follow that kind of politics, is what I'm saying. Equally, I don't think we need to be twisting ourselves into knots to try and give a broader point to Nick Timothy's obvious bigotry, right? But everything that you both have said to me, I'm happy to have that reasonable conversation about Islam and religion more broadly, right? Whether we want to take a French, hard secular perspective, or whether, we're slightly more liberal in our understanding of religion. That's not what's happening here, right? He called a cultural event of Muslims and people of all other faiths coming together an act of domination and straight out of the Islamist playbook. He didn't make any kinds of broader points
And we should be talking about integration in a way that's really constructive.
Can I say, we just have to be honest here, and I hope every listener listening to this is just honest. Why does this never happen about any other faith but Muslims? It's always Muslims, even in events like this, that have to come onto these shows and come onto national broadcast and defend our existence in this city. We have to defend the fact that I'm British.
Come on, wait till you hear about anti-Semitism. There are plenty of groups within London that suffer huge and problematic discrimination. Yeah. So you are right to say there is a group of people that are clearly wanting to have a go at Muslims all the time. There are different groups wanting to have a go at different people. What we're really talking about here is a failure of meaningful integration. Mm-hmm. That's the issue that we should be talking about.
And I should point out that, Ali, you were invited on this programme long before Nick Timothy's comments, so it's just a happy coincidence, or unhappy coincidence. I don't know that you're here. Right, we'll move on to some more questions in a moment. If you'd like to take part in the programme, 0345 6060 973. It's 8:31. Darryl Jackson has the LBC News headlines.
The Bank of England governor has told LBC the US and its allies need to get oil supplies moving again. The bank's Monetary Policy Committee has voted to keep interest rates at 3.75% over fears the conflict in the Middle East could lead to a jump in inflation. Benjamin Netanyahu says US President Donald Trump was not dragged into the war with Iran. Israel's Prime Minister has given a briefing saying Iran is weaker than it's ever been and that the war will take as long as necessary. And it's estimated 100 students have been turned away from getting meningitis B jabs at the University of Kent. Queues closed early today because they'd reached capacity. LBC weather: cloudy in southeast Scotland and northeast England tonight. Clear elsewhere, a low of 1 degree.
This is LBC.
Calling all young creatives. Kickstart your career in media. Apply now and join us in years 10 or 12 at Global Academy. globalacademy.com.
It's hard to concentrate when you're worried about your health. It can feel like there's a wall between you and the rest of the world. Like you can't be fully present.
Hello, AXA Health. How can I help?
At AXA Health Insurance, we build our teams with people who care. So when you need us, we're here to support you. For cover that cares, search AXA Health Insurance. Pre-existing conditions are not covered.
A Southern train is a place where you can wind down and catch up. A chance to let conversations flow and plans unfold. And swap doom scrolling for telling stories. Too good for the group chat. Make the journey part of the joy and save 1/3 with off-peak group tickets at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
Have you ever felt like your investment advisor is giving you an off-the-shelf retirement plan? That they just want to put you in a box? But who wants that? At Fisher Investments UK, we never put you in a box. We create a plan that's just right for you because it's only right for us if it's right for you. Fisher Investments UK. Retirement advice that's as individual as you are. Learn more at fisherinvestments.co.uk. Investing involves the risk of loss. Fisher Investments UK is regulated by the UK Financial Conduct Authority.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:33 on LBC. I should tell you, actually, it turns out that Ali was invited this afternoon, but not for the reason of Nick Timothy.
And how kind I was to let that.
You were very, very, very kind. But anyway, right. Ali Milani is here, chair of the Labour Muslim Network. Gina Miller, businesswoman and political activist. She's going to love the next question. Matt Warman, former Conservative MP and digital minister, and Leon Emirali, an entrepreneur. Now, how are you an entrepreneur? What do you entrepreneur?
I've got a software business that replicates an organisation's external environment, including MPs. We've created digital twins of all 650 members of Parliament.
Oh my goodness, how frightening.
One set was enough. So he explained this to me earlier, and you all seem to have understood. No, I
pretended it. How do you make money out of
that? Companies buy it to war game. What will MPs say if we announce this or that?
Well, you know that you are looking at Global's AI digital ambassador in Corey, our producer.
Corey, we will have a chat after
so you might be able to persuade our Lords and Masters to give you some money.
Oh, let's hope. Let's hope.
Wow.
He's shaking his head.
Let's go to Luke in Orpington. Hello, Luke.
Hi there. I'm an entrepreneur as well. My question is, before we consider leaving Brexit, why don't we try using it first, and what 2 or 3 things could you suggest we do try by using Brexit?
So why don't we try and make use of Brexit rather than continually dismiss it? You've put something in my mind there, because you said leave Brexit. What word would we use to leave Brexit? There's a challenge for anyone. 84850 if you want to put something on the text.
Leg it.
Gina Miller.
I presume the question is that why are politicians not doing more to make Brexit work?
I think that's behind it. I mean, we should just before you go on, we should explain that Sadiq Khan has said that it is inevitable that Britain will rejoin the EU, and that Labour should campaign for this at the next election. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves has argued this week that Brexit has hurt economic growth and that Britain needs to be more closely aligned to European trading rules. Well, why doesn't she just come out and say, I want to rejoin? That would be the honest position, wouldn't it?
Because realigning and rejoining are not the same thing. But going back to why Brexit, we are not making most of this win, I think I've been asking that for 10 years now. I've been saying, you won. Let's get on with it. Let's get all those great big wins you were going to get. I think they've tried. Well, we've got trade deals that don't quite match up together to more than about 3% of GDP, bearing in mind how much we lost. I believe they have tried, and what they found is it's much more difficult to get the benefits of Brexit than they anticipated.
Well, if Nigel Farage were here, and we haven't got a reform person on the panel tonight...
Yeah, he's very quiet on Brexit these days, isn't he?
Is he? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, he is.
He would no doubt say, well, they haven't tried. The last government didn't really put the shoulder to the wheel, and that they should have abolished a lot of the regulations to free up the economy. We could become Singapore on Thames.
Well, they tried. Do you remember that great Rip-Up Act that they were going to have that was going to take away all these things? And when they looked at it, they realised that actually of the 3,000 they were going to rip up, they could only really do 80. And then it was much more complicated. Look, we are entwined in a way that makes it very difficult to make Brexit in whatever form work. I know there's a book out that says there's 75
yeah.
benefits.
I was going to bring
of Brexit.
you a copy.
I've read it, and can I just say it is so cherry-picking and flawed. It's quite extraordinary. Just because something is sourced doesn't mean that it's been modelled, and actually any person who's got any sort of training in economics...
all 75 can't be wrong. I mean, there must be some of them.
There are fantastic things like different rules for pets and motor licenses and fishing and really obscure things that, about half of it is obscure things to really don't push the dial on GDP or on a productivity, which is really what we're talking about, is that how do we get those things, the damage that we've done, how do we get back some of the growth that we've lost and some of the damage that's been done to businesses, especially small businesses. And the thing is, we have to live with where we are. And my view on that is that we have to reduce some of the damage. And that means alignment rather than rejoining, because guess what? The EU would have to agree to us rejoining. And I don't see any signals coming from the EU that they, A, trust us, or B, have any appetite.
I mean, Rachel Reeves has said, well, we'd like to have closer alignment, but not on AI and not on something else. And the EU are going to turn around and say, well, hang on a minute, you're not in the driving seat here. We'll dictate what we want to allow you to do. And if you want to come back in some shape or form, AI is going to be part of it.
Absolutely. And they're going to play harder ball than we are. And the truth is, we are a middle nation. We have to look at other unions and other partnerships. But Europe, we have to work closely in line on defence, on energy, and on reducing as much friction as we can. Those are the three most practical things. Brexit has been used by political football by all sides. And I am so disgusted by that. It's now about how do we create a better environment economically that actually means that people can feel it in their pockets.
I mean, I'm getting the sense from you because, I mean, people know you from the referendum and all the rest of it as a sort of absolute Remainer. But you seem to, and this is not the first time I've thought this about things you've said, certainly on this programme that I've read that you've written, where you kind of want to make Brexit work. And people don't see that about you.
No. I'm a realist. How do you undo where we are? We literally sawed off one leg, but we're still here. So, the whole idea that you can put on 75 plasters, which is what I call that book, and somehow it's going to make it all better. It's not. We've got to figure out a different way to walk. In the future, we might have a bionic leg. We might be able to do something different. Right now, for the next 3, 5, 10 years, we have to live with the reality that we're in.
Right. Bob has come up with the name for leaving Brexit. Return.
Return.
Matt Warman.
Well, sold on return.
Now, you used to represent a very Brexity constituency.
So, I mean, I'd say two things. I think, obviously, GDP and the economy is a huge part of the Brexit conversation, but it is not the sole reason why people voted for Brexit. And I think a successful government, to return to the question, making the most of it, would also be talking about, you know what, Britain now has the right to make its own laws in a way that it did not before, and that is the foundation on which you might build. But they're doing it. But they're not talking about it in that way, are they? We don't hear this is something we are able to do that we were not able to do
because there are very few of those.
Indeed, that's the whole problem. That foundationally, our relationship is no longer tied to what is decided in Brussels or at a European level. We are working from a different set of starting points than we were before. You might say that it's a worse place to start.
We ceded a little bit of sovereignty.
But
we didn't cede all our sovereignty. I'm sorry, you're telling me that all other 27 member states and governments and people said, you know what, we're quite happy to be ruled by somebody else. That's why we're going to sign up. We're all idiots. And Britain was the only country that was clever enough to come out from this.
I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that there was clearly a degree of the interest of the body as a whole rather than what is in the interest of one individual nation. And you might say, of course, that overall that is the right thing to do. But that is not what people voted for. And that is why I do agree with you that going back and relitigating all of that is not in anyone's interest. I mean, I should say that from the point of view of my constituency, my former constituency, the idea of challenging that democratic vote was abhorrent.
But I didn't.
But
tell me, I didn't challenge that vote.
But the suggestion that we should have a second referendum from some,
and I never backed that either.
From some,
no, but people think you did.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't.
But the suggestion.
Well, apparently, I'm saying there's fake news out there that I've lost a case against Rupert Lowe, which is all fake news. So there's a lot of fake news going around.
Right, can we move on because we haven't heard from our other two panellists yet? Leon.
Yeah, look, I don't think Brexit has worked out in the way that it could have done. I wasn't in favour of Brexit initially, not because I love the EU, but because I didn't know what the solution was going to be, and I don't think anyone did. The reality is we've got the worst of both worlds, which is we've got friction added with our relationship with the European Union, and we're effectively taking their rules without having an opportunity to make any of them. And that is not what anyone wanted. And if I'm entirely honest, I think the reason for that is the British state is not capable of making Brexit work. it is too much of a detanglement if we were to do the Singapore-on-Thames model and try our best to deviate and to have our own opportunities
I'm
to do
sorry,
things.
but Singapore, have you looked at the size of Singapore compared to the UK?
Yeah, I'm not talking literally, Gina. I'm saying theoretically, we can do things on taxation, we can do things on regulation.
But why haven't you done it then?
Well, that's what I'm asking. That's what everyone's asking. And I think the reality is, I don't think the British state is capable of creating that ability for us to benefit.
Because of your experience? You were an advisor to Steve Barclay when he was Brexit Secretary. Did you find that you or he wanted to change things in government, and there was just so much resistance that it was impossible?
Well, I was in his parliamentary office just to make clear, but I saw what he was working on, and there were moments when people were sat around the table and questioning, what's the benefit of this that we can sell to the British public, and there wasn't many of them, if I'm entirely honest with you, during that period. And I think that spoke to the issue, which was we were afraid to really pull the plaster off and go for it. And okay, it wasn't helped by the fact that then COVID came about. I think we had the first case of COVID in the UK on the day we left the European Union. So that didn't help. But ultimately, I don't think Brexit has been a success. And I think it's within legitimacy, as Sadiq Khan suggests, to at least think about what's our relationship like with the EU. Do we rejoin it? Especially because the world is fragmented, and the US. I know Donald Trump is a temporary phenomenon, but our relationship with the US has fractured. Where do we look, towards the EU or towards the US?
Ali, how much of a discussion within the Labour Party is this about are most people on Rachel Reeves' side wanting to be more closely aligned, or if there was a referendum within the Labour Party, do you think there'd be a majority for actually going back in and fighting the next election on that, as Sadiq Khan suggests?
I think for sure there'd be a majority for getting Britain back into the European Union. That's just where the Labour membership is, and always has been, really. But the membership has been pretty pro EU and rejoining and second referendum, which is why you saw that come up in our 2019 manifesto, which ultimately I think cost us the election. But look, I think the world is a very different place today than it was in 2016, right? Clearly, the war in Ukraine, the war in Iran now, the Strait of Hormuz, the energy crisis means that there are some things we just have to do. Gina's absolutely right. On energy and security, they're no-brainers on closer realignment with our European partners, both geographically, economically. These things all make sense. What I would love is for us, and we've actually sort of had it here today, is for our politics to be able to have a conversation on Brexit, because there seems to have been this coalition between left and right, where the right don't really want to talk about Brexit, because then they'd have to talk about what's happened, right, and the utter disaster that Brexit has been. You talk about sawing your own leg off, or we cut off our own leg. I kind of see it as we're the first country that, in my lifetime, that put economic sanctions on ourselves, right, which is really interesting. And the left are terrified of Brexit, right? I'll tell you that for sure, as being on the left, depending on how far left you go, but on the left are terrified to talk about Brexit. And it just seems like the country has been in this sort of malaise of being just terrified to talk about, can we do closer realignment without it being automatically, which you were today, saying, why don't we just rejoin, right? And see where that takes us. And ultimately, look, in 2029, we might be having a very different discussion, because the world might be in a very different place. Yeah. Whether Labour should put it on their manifesto, as Sadiq Khan has said today, I think do anything to get some votes today.
I think we've got to be honest about why a lot of people did vote for Brexit, and this can be contested, but I think a lot of people, it was immigration as to one of the motivations for voting for Brexit. And the reality is immigration has risen as a result of Brexit. And that, to me, was always obvious, because what's going to happen to the hundreds of thousands of jobs that were going to be vacated by Europeans who subsequently left the UK? They were going to be replaced by non-European immigration. And I think that's why Brexit feels like such a failure, because what could have been an easy win, which is restricting immigration from the EU, ended up actually achieving the opposite.
But then how do we replace those workers?
But you see, we've got a text here, which I wouldn't normally read out, but it's illustrative of the point you were making, Ali. It's from Sarah. Leon, please don't call yourself a Conservative. You are a traitor. And Steve Barclay was Brexit Secretary in Theresa May's government, which was effing useless. And it's that kind of stance that means you can't have a rational debate on it. And I get this all the time when I say, look, I voted for Brexit, but I'm very happy to have close relations with the EU, and therefore I'm a closet Liberal Democrat.
But I can tell you, I'll get lots of abuse from the Remainers or the Joiners and everybody else for what I say. But then because I say practical, I'm interested in how do we do things that are reasonable, practical, and actually honest. And the fact is, if we voted tomorrow as a nation to rejoin, okay, there are a number of countries ahead of us in the queue, including Ukraine, who would ascend to the EU before us. It's not going to happen anytime soon.
No.
By the way, it's also got to be unanimous. So every single state, the existing members and new members, would have to agree to that. This whole fantasy, that's what I hate in politics. Brexit is used when our domestic politics is failing. Europe is a whipping boy. I'm sorry, it gives an out to politicians. They should be concentrating on getting things right here, not Brexit.
Right, we're going to concentrate on some more questions in a moment, including our fun question at the end of the programme, which Leon is really looking forward to. It's 8:48.
Sorry to interrupt your day, but I've just been diagnosed with dementia, and I'm going to need your help. I'll need help when I can no longer button a shirt or recognise my own family. My daughter will need help too. I worry this could ruin her life. And we will all need help to find a cure to end the devastation of dementia. I can't do this alone.
It will take a society to beat dementia. Alzheimer's Society.
At ulesprosperity.com, you buy the car and we pay you up to £600 per month in rental income. For conditions, visit ulesprosperity.com.
And now your travel news. It's starting to look a bit congested on the A4872 southbound. We're hearing reports people are slowing down to look at the Volkswagen Transporter sales event. Apparently you can get £1,500 off any new Transporter. That's any variant, any trim, and any colour until the 31st of March. Now that's a deal worth queuing for. Search VW Transporter offers. UK retail customers 18 plus. Discount applies to price of all new Transporters ordered by 31st of March and delivered by 30th of June.
Lidl Plus gives you another reason to celebrate this spring. With a Lini Prosecco Spumante now only $4.69. And it's Good Housekeeping Institute taste approved. Woo! More bubbles for your buck. Lidl, more to value. Be drink away 18 plus subject to availability. Excludes Scotland. Offer ends 8th of the 4th, 26. Terms apply. See lidl.co.uk/LPTV.
So, you're geared up for this making tax digital thing?
Sure, I just need some new mud boards, bag of cavity tyres and a couple of lintels.
Hey, MTD, mate. Digital taxes.
It's an extension down Station Road on the corner.
Dave, digital taxes, mate.
Yeah. Probably will need some 2x4s. I want to take the van in for a new fan belt, squeaky.
Hey, making tax digital, Dave.
Avoiding MTD? Sage makes tax simpler for sole traders. Search Sage MTD to get your free software today.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
10 minutes.
10 to 9 on LBC. Let me reintroduce my panel. Ali Milani is here, Gina Miller, Matt Warman and Leon Emirali. Right, a text question. My earpiece has just fallen out. A text question from Nicole. The government is cutting the aid we give to desperate people in all but 4 countries around the world. Should we be ashamed of our country for this? Now, Britain is cutting its overseas aid budget by around £6 billion by next year in order to spend more on defence instead, meaning that only Ukraine, Palestine, Lebanon and Sudan will have their current levels of aid funding maintained. Mozambique and Pakistan will see the largest cuts to the aid provided by the UK. Matt, let's start with you.
So I think aid spending has always been immensely difficult in the sense if you ask the British public how much should we be spending where, what should the purpose of that be, it has always been hugely out of kilter with what we actually spent, even when it was the 0.7% of GDP, which was way less than people thought it was, if you see what I mean. If I'm honest, I think if I look at the top priorities the country currently faces with where should we be spending more money on defence? Absolutely yes. And it comes down to where do you take that money from? And I think you do have to say that done well, defence spending is investing in a safer world. That is in all of our interests. I think this is simply one of those cases where there is a very, very difficult set of questions to ask. And if you start to say to politicians or to the public, look, it's the police, it's the fire service, it's the NHS, it's this, that or the other, and we need to spend more on defence, it is no surprise that we are making cuts to the international aid budget. I think it is an inevitable but regrettable situation.
Reasonably short answers to this one, please, and we can fit in another question. Ali?
One of the things I'd like to mention, people often think aid we do out the kindness of our hearts, and we should, right? We have, I think, a moral responsibility, certainly to countries that we've done some very, very terrible things to in our history. So I do think there's a moral argument, but aid also is enormously in our benefit. It stops conflicts in parts of the world that we get drawn into. It stops diseases. It stops the spread of pandemics. All sorts of different enormous benefits that come to our country and to our region and to the world more broadly through aid budgets. So I just think we need to be really, really careful when we talk about aid, because so often it's kind of presented as, we're struggling ourselves, our gas prices are where they are with the defense of Ukraine, all this kind of stuff. That's the first place we should cut. And people ignore the fact that traditionally aid is given to stop problems elsewhere that might come here or we might be dragged into. And so that's something I think that it's enormously important that we look at. And I do think it's shameful. I actually think it's another cheap win for politicians. Whenever they want to find money somewhere, they'll cut the aid budget because it is popular amongst the country, largely because I think there's a lot of misinformation on it.
Leo?
Yeah, I think we should be spending aid where it benefits us. The moral argument I can buy, but we live in difficult times, and there is money that should be spent at home. I think in areas where things like combating disease, that's an area that impacts us. Areas where it comes to strengthening defence, that's an area that impacts us. But Pakistan being one of the countries where we're cutting aid to, that country has a nuclear programme, for goodness sake. Why are we sending money there? And the other point to make is that we're only spending small amounts in the grand scheme of things. We are not going to solve all of the issues in Mozambique and Pakistan and everywhere else. So it's almost just a token that is insignificant, is a drop in the ocean, doesn't really have an impact, yet it's deeply politically unpopular. And I think that money should be apportioned domestically.
But we were regarded as an international development superpower until the last few years when the Boris Johnson government cut international aid, and then I couldn't believe it when I saw that Labour were going to cut it even more. I mean, isn't that a sign of this nation's decline, Gina?
Yeah, because aid is an investment for all the reasons, moral, economic, medically, influence. It is soft, but it's an investment. It's a small amount when you look at I think it should be 1%. I think it should be back at 1%. That said, I think we should review some countries. I didn't understand why India got aid, for example. I think there's some reviews there, but that's not the first place you should go. It's the last place you should go, in my mind. Politicians, there's so much other waste, other things we can do to fill the coffers, close the tax gap, look at inefficiencies in the civil service. There's lots of other things we can do as a nation rather than running to cutting aid.
Zach says, can you please get this guy off your platform, please? He's talking absolute rubbish. Now, I don't know.
That's on me.
I don't know whether it's you, Leon, me, or Matt.
I'm going to hide behind me.
I don't know.
He probably means all of us.
Yeah.
Rico.
It's not me.
Okay.
Gina's off the hook. We're
Rico
fine.
says, was the response to COVID so bad that we, the public, simply can't trust what authorities are saying about meningitis now? Now, the COVID inquiry chair, Baroness Hallett, has today released a report which found that the messaging during the pandemic was so severe that much of the public believed the NHS was closed and therefore avoided potentially life-saving treatments, while the report has also concluded that the NHS came close to collapse in 2020. Leon?
Yeah, I mean, I find the meningitis issue at the moment quite scary, mainly because I've got a young daughter, and I think there is a lot of question marks about how we as a country are going to react to these types of issues that are going to keep coming up because of what happened during COVID. And there's a great distrust, I think, amongst the public as a result of what happened during COVID, of experts, of the government, of bodies like the UK HSA, UK Health Security Agency, and I think that's a problem because we don't trust the information that's coming our way anymore.
I've got to ask for short answers again, Matt.
I think we should trust what the government is saying. I think we have actually learnt on the messaging some quite serious lessons from COVID. I think the challenge is actually how do you combat the misinformation and disinformation online, not how do you work out whether you can trust the government.
And Wes Streeting, I was watching him on television this morning, who I thought was being actually brilliant in the way that he was talking about this and not ramping it up, being very reassuring, and I thought very believable.
I think we are in an age where trust is in low supply, and what's in high demand is using the internet and misinformation. And I think it's a really difficult situation when we do have any sort of national crisis or any crisis, regional or national. Politicians, we have to really think long and hard about how we rebuild trust, but also how we communicate to people. I mean, the misinformation and the blame. I've seen some parents blaming other parents and saying it's because you didn't give your child MMR vaccination. Yes, we have a problem with the uptake of MMR, but MMR, that meningitis A is not. This is meningitis B. I mean, so, you've got parents at the school gates and blaming each other. We have to find a way of getting information out there that is correct and trusted.
Ali?
Yeah, I would actually slightly disagree. I don't think that... I think the NHS did an incredible job during the COVID pandemic. I think it was a failure of political leadership, because everything the scientific community said was largely right, and the advice that they gave, that the government at the time didn't follow.
Up to a point.
Up to what they could have known with the information that they had at the time, which is what anyone can ever expect of scientists. I was incredibly proud of the scientific and healthcare response to COVID. It was political leadership that was missing. So honestly, my advice on these things is always listen to the experts on this, whether it's...
I'm sorry to push back on that.
Yeah.
But the advice that Matt Hancock and Boris Johnson were getting from Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance in March 2020 was not to lock down too early because people wouldn't take it.
Take what?
Take being locked down. So they advised to leave it for another week. And we know what happened then.
They also wanted the lockdown, the eventual lockdown, to happen 2 weeks earlier than it actually did, right?
No, absolutely not. I'm quite the reverse.
Or they wanted more lockdowns the second time? Or am I completely wrong?
Second time, yes, but not the first time. Anyway, we need to move on to our fun question. We want to miss out on that. Brian says,
never mind,
Formula One world champion Lando Norris is going to become the latest famous person to get a waxwork made and put on display at Madame Tussauds in London. Who else should be celebrated with a waxwork? Ali?
So, look, this one's for Nick Timothy. This goes out to Nick Timothy.
I knew you were going to say that.
Every single person that was praying in Trafalgar Square gets a waxwork in Nick Timothy's garden.
Fantastic. Leon.
Or Sadiq Khan, that'll send him right into the moon.
Leon.
I think when Keir Starmer's at the end of his time in office, we just move him out of Downing Street into Madame Tussauds as a ready-made waxwork, save them some money. And why don't they make a little Larry the Cat waxwork while they're there?
Oh, that'd be great. That one I'd support, definitely. But,
where is Iain Dale waxwork? The nation demands.
Sitting here. Gina.
I'm going to have a serious one. Just made me think about COVID. Is I'd say the Turkish couple, the scientists who came up with the mRNA vaccination, I would put them in there.
And that's why you were exempt from that tweet.
I am not a Arsenal supporter, but I think Max Dowman is going to be in there fairly soon. The 16-year-old who scored he was the youngest ever player to score a goal, and what a goal it was. And I was watching a thing on Instagram today of him going back to school on Monday morning.
Yeah. Oh, in that case, we should have Kim, who just won the Formula One. Talk about the Formula Lando Norris. What about the 16-year-old or 18-year-old who's just won?
Kimi Antonelli.
Kimi Antonelli.
The kids are taking over. Down's still in the Premier League. He's winning the F1.
Thank you all very much indeed. Right, Monday's panel includes the Conservative MP Simon Hoare, the Sunday Telegraph columnist Janet Daly, plus the former Labour advisor James Mathewson. Right. In the next hour, we are going to talk about greyhound racing. Oh, yes, we are. Something I've never done in 16 years on LBC. Because Scotland has become the second country in the UK to ban greyhound racing in just over 24 hours as MSPs backed a bill to end the sport. Now, the Greyhound Racing Offences Scotland bill was supported by 70 votes to 27 at stage 3 with 19 abstentions. What's wrong with greyhound racing? I mean, I'm a dog lover, and as far as I can see, I mean, greyhounds were born to run. They run round a track. What's not to like about that? But I've got this feeling that this is one of those phone-ins where I'm going to adopt a position at 9 o'clock, and by 10 o'clock, I'll have changed it. You never know.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the Bank of England has decided unanimously to hold the base rate of interest at 3.75%. The decision was widely expected, with the Middle East conflict raging, sparking concerns about inflation. Speaking to LBC's Andrew Marr, the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey has urged leaders to find a peace plan.
The best thing we can do, actually, for the world economy, let's not just talk about the UK economy, let's talk about the world economy and people in the world, is to sort out the problem in terms of reopening the energy supply lines, because that is in the best interests of people in the world.
The Israeli Prime Minister says Iran is weaker than ever, insisting the war will take as long as necessary. Benjamin Netanyahu has outlined the objectives in the conflict against the regime.
1. Removing the nuclear threat. 2. Removing the ballistic missile threat, and removing both of these threats before they're buried deep underground and become immune from aerial attack.
He also confirmed Israel acted alone in striking an Iranian gas compound yesterday. That attack, and one by Iran on Qatar, have increased concerns about a global energy crisis. The latest report in the COVID inquiry highlights an almost complete collapse of the NHS during the pandemic. The investigation says that was only narrowly avoided thanks to the efforts of healthcare staff. It also points to confusion around stay-at-home messaging, with many avoiding hospitals despite needing medical treatment. A teenage boy died in a fire at a block of flats in London, which started next to a fire station. It broke out in Southwark yesterday afternoon. Another teenager was taken to hospital. It's not yet known how it started. The Conservative leader has defended her Shadow Justice Secretary's comments about a Muslim public prayer event in London. Nick Timothy called the Iftar event in Trafalgar Square an act of domination and division. London's mayor called the comments a disgrace, but Kemi Badenoch told LBC religious events should follow what she calls the shared norms.
He's talking about the domination of public spaces, and that is something that I do agree with. Our public spaces should be inclusive, and I think that if you have people doing things that are not inclusive and doing it in a way that actually could intimidate other people, then that's something we should stop.
In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 242 points at 10,063. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather: cloudy in southeast Scotland and northeast England tonight. Clear elsewhere, a low of 1 degree. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
.9:05 on LBC. Now, as many of you know, I'm a dog lover. I have 2 dogs, a miniature Schnauzer and a Jack Russell. And I wouldn't particularly want to see them racing around a dog track, because certainly Woody, my miniature Schnauzer, wouldn't make it to the end. My Jack Russell in his heyday probably would have loved it, but he's 14 now, so the joints are creaking a bit. So I have a great interest in being a dog lover. I just think dogs are the most amazing things. I was watching something on Instagram the other day, and somebody was saying dogs are God's greatest invention. And I would absolutely go along with that. So when I saw this story about Wales banning greyhound racing, I sort of pricked my ears up and I thought, well, why are they doing that? Because greyhounds, they run very fast. They love running very fast. Whenever you see a greyhound in the park, sort of off the lead, I mean, it's a magnificent sight to behold, isn't it? So why would you want to ban that? I thought to myself. So I was instinctively I was against it. But I've just got this nagging feeling in the back of my mind that you are all going to tell me that I'm wrong, that there are very good reasons for banning this. And you see, as I say this, I see a text from Ed who says, Iain, as a dog lover, you aren't going to like what you will hear about what happens to the dogs that are raced. Well, we'll see about that in a few minutes' time. But now Scotland has also become the second country in the UK to ban greyhound racing. It happened in a vote in the Scottish Parliament last night. Tuesday it was the turn of the Senedd in Wales. I don't see any attempt in the English Parliament to do that, to do it. And the Scottish one is quite interesting because apparently there are no greyhound racing tracks in the whole of Scotland. The last one closed last year, so I'm not quite sure what the point of this legislation is. But there aren't actually that many greyhound racing tracks left, or dog tracks in general left in England either, as far as I know. I think there's only one in London, in Romford. I used to live in Walthamstow, where there was a very famous dog track there. That closed, I think, a few years ago. So what are the objections to greyhound racing? Have you ever been to greyhound racing? Do you own a greyhound? Love to hear the views of greyhound owners. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Dominic Dyer joins us, an animal rights campaigner, writer and broadcaster. Dominic, you're going to educate me as to why my stance should change before the end of the hour, aren't you?
I hope I can, Ian, because I'm a dog lover as well. And I think the more you look at greyhound racing, the darker it gets, really. And you've said already that lots of the tracks across the country have closed down. It's not really a commercially viable sport to a large degree anymore. But let's just look at the facts. We've obviously got these two bills that have just been passed in the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly. Yes, there's no tracks in Scotland, but the bill's aims and objectives is to prevent any new ones being opened up. So this sport can't effectively restart again. But the theft, toll and injury of dogs in greyhound racing is absolutely staggering. If you look at the Greyhound Board of Racing's own statistics, so this is the industry statistics, Ian, 1,357 greyhounds died at the trackside between 2017 and 2024. Now, any dog lover would say that is just not acceptable. 35,000
How did they die? I mean, what did they die of? Because, I mean, that is a horrifying statistic.
They sustained significant injuries by racing around these oval tracks that can affect the body and can affect the legs. 35,000 sustained long-term injuries. So they didn't die, but they had long-term injuries afterwards. There's lots of evidence, good scientific research, and lots of veterinary organisations would support this to say that actually racing dogs around these oval tracks at the speeds that they race them is actually very detrimental to the health of the dogs. And not only that, the whole sort of racing industry has altered. I think a lot of us maybe have romantic images of greyhound racing and George Formby in 1940s Britain and all the rest of it, you know, with a guy down the pub that has two dogs that he might race. But that's not the sport that we have today. You know, many of the owners of greyhounds have hundreds of dogs that they breed. They overbreed the dogs. The actual tracks themselves are very poorly attended. The primary aim and objective is to actually just live screen this racing that then goes to Asia and other places for the betting industry, which, as you know, is a big online industry. So that's primarily what it's about. When you're breeding so many dogs, you have lots of surplus dogs. They call it wastage, and large number of those dogs are killed. And often they're dumped and they're shot with, you know, bolt guns. It's not a nice exercise at all. The living conditions of the dogs is extremely poor. Many are kept in kennels for 95% of their time when they're not racing. Overall, you know, the whole situation with racing, for example, in hot temperatures where you're racing dogs when it's really hot and they get heat stroke, the injuries, the breeding, the killing of surplus dogs, it's become an absolute nightmare from an animal welfare perspective. And around the world, it's been closing down. You know, you look at Tasmania, Australia, New Zealand, wherever you look, bans are going into place for greyhound racing. It's a dying industry, and I hope that what we will see because of what's happened in the Welsh Assembly and Scottish Parliament is that finally in England we could bring it to an end as well. I just don't think in the modern civilised world where animal welfare is so important, we love dogs, of course we love dogs, and we should allow this sport to continue.
How many racing tracks are there in England?
There are only a small number that are now still existing. There are one or two that have been reopened. There's one in Oxford recently that's reopened. But ultimately, I think most people that are in the business know that this is actually is not commercially viable. It's not like racehorsing. You know, the racing industry is a big industry, and I have concerns, you know, like Cheltenham over the last few days, how many horses died there. But you're not going to see the racing industry shut down. There are significant concerns about animal welfare. But when it comes to dog tracks, there are only a few left. Some people might invest in building new ones. But realistically, I just don't think this is a sport that's got a future. And because it hasn't got significant commercial benefits attached to opening tracks and people coming, I think the level of commitment in terms of the animal welfare has been very low as well. And I think that's part of the problem. Where does the money come to rehome the animals? Where does the commitment come to make the welfare of the greyhounds the most important priority in this industry? And at the moment, that's just not happening.
What is the average lifespan of a greyhound? Because various breeds of dogs are very different in terms of lifespan, aren't they?
Well, you know, a greyhound, if it's retired, and there are some great charities that retire racing greyhounds, can live well beyond 10 years of age. But a lot of these racing dogs have a very short life. They'll be lucky to live to 2 or 3 years. They just kill because they're surplus to requirements, because the breeders don't keep them. They're expensive to maintain and to keep. We have that problem in the horse racing industry as well, Ian. You have lots of people that, invest in racehorses, and we breed too many of them, and many of them end up being slaughtered, and some are going into the food chain into Europe. So, there is a surplus of horses, there's a surplus of greyhounds, and you can be sentimental about this, but the people that breed and race them are not sentimental about it. They're not just going to keep dogs just because they love them in large numbers. And that's part of the problem that we have with an industry like this.
I mean, I don't know if it's even possible to answer this question, but I mean, when they're racing themselves, do the greyhounds enjoy it?
They like racing. I've no doubt about that. But, you could say that, do they enjoy hare coursing, which is terribly cruel and illegal too? They will chase after a hare. They will race around a track. But actually, both of those pastimes are potentially very dangerous to the dogs, and we see injuries occurring because of it. My view would be that, yes, greyhounds can race and greyhounds can run, but they shouldn't be raced around oval tracks in the way that we're racing them in this industry today, because we've got lots of evidence to show that those poor animals will suffer as a consequence.
What was that number again of dogs that died?
1,357 greyhounds died at the trackside in Great Britain between 2017 and 2024, and 35,168 sustained long-term injuries. They're statistics from the Greyhound Board of Great Britain.
Right. Okay.
They are staggering, and that's why when you look at the political decisions taken in the Scottish Parliament and in the Welsh Assembly, the people voting have those statistics, have that data, and of course they were shocked, and of course they would be concerned. So why would they not vote to actually bring this to an end? There are vested interests, I would say, in England at the moment trying to prevent a similar vote being taken in our parliament. But I think, to be quite frank, and I'm in parliament a lot talking about animal welfare issues, and I know MPs care deeply about dogs and deeply about cats and the welfare of companion animals. And I think there's a time has come for them to actually debate this in the British Parliament as well.
Dominic, thank you very much indeed. That's Dominic Dyer, animal rights campaigner, writer and broadcaster. In a moment, well, we've heard the case for the prosecution there. We'll hear the case for the defence in a moment. Let me just read out a couple of texts. Mark says, Hannah Spencer, the new Gorton and Denton Green Party MP, has 4 ex-greyhound racing dogs. Well, that puts her foot up in my estimation, it has to be said. Mark says, Ian, I generally hate your politics and think that you are an absolutely awful person. Thanks, Mark. But, he carries on. There's always a but, isn't there? If you're a miniature Schnauzer owner, then I'll cut you some slack. Say hello to our Alfie. He sends me a picture of Alfie, who looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm sure he'd get on with my Woody. Insert your own joke here. 15 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Wrong tool for the job? Don't make that mistake with your van. Get up to 30% off selected new Toyota vans and pickups with a warranty up to 10 years or 100,000 miles with every qualifying routine service. Visit your nearest Toyota centre or visit toyota.co.uk/van savings for more details. Savings on selected vans and pickups ordered by the 31st of March 2026. UK residents. See toyota.co.uk for full details. T's and C's apply.
Idle money lies in your current account, picking crumbs out of its belly button, wondering, should I eat them? But when you start investing with Monzo, your money's always busy. It turns on regular investments, invests your spare change, and tops up your stocks and shares ISA. It even helps you make sense of risk and return. Monzo, the bank that gets your money moving. You could get back less than you invest. Monzo current account required. UK residents 18+. T's and C's apply.
Train to Chichester. Flasks filled, snacks packed, all ready for Maisie's first stargazing adventure.
Come on, Maisie. Follow everyone up to the top of that hill.
Oh, look, that one's the plough.
Shooting star. Wow.
Made it. Last train back and feeling cosmic. And it seems we have an astronaut in the making. Download the Southern Railway app to book kids' tickets for £2 on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop is a story.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
16 minutes past 9 on LBC. I just had a WhatsApp message from my local MP, Mike Martin, the Liberal Democrat. He's interviewing me at the Tunbridge Wells Literary Festival on the 9th of May, and he's just sent me a graphic of the advert for this thing. And I'm not described as LBC radio presenter, political commentator, or anything like that. I'm described as satirist. Now, I think I'm quite a funny guy, But even I wouldn't describe myself as a satirist, so I think they need to get that changed. I'm not sure that's going to attract the punters, is it? Right, we are going to talk to Linda Bonner, who is a Greyhound welfare ambassador, and asking her whether, well, I suspect I know the answer to this, whether she thinks that Greyhound racing should be banned in England as well as Scotland and Wales. Linda, welcome to the programme. I don't know if you were listening at the beginning, but I said, look, I'm instinctively against this, but I have this feeling that I might be persuaded during the programme that to change my mind on it. Now, we heard some statistics there from Dominic Dyer. 1,357 dogs died at the trackside in a, 6-year period. I mean, those are horrific statistics.
Hello, Iain. Thanks again for having me on. Yes, the statistics, when you look at the number, it's the number in itself doesn't actually tell the message about what's happening in greyhound racing. We've recently, since 2018, we've started to provide transparency with the data over injury rates and euthanasia rates. And I think it's far more important to look at the trend on that statistic. Whenever the injury rate and, we'll look at fatalities. If you look at fatalities, in 2018, there was a 0.06% fatality rate in greyhounds in England and Wales. But actually, year on year, that's coming down with better track maintenance, better management of welfare management, making sure that all the research behind keeping the track safe is actually put into place, and we're down now to 0.03%. Now, that's still a significant number of fatalities, that if there's anything that we can do to reduce that, as welfareists, we must keep trying to do that.
But, it never occurred to me. I mean, I suppose, look, there's always the odd accident that can happen in any sport. Footballers have collapsed with heart attacks on pitches, and no one suggests that football should be banned. But even if you cut the rate by a third, you'd still have sort of 700 or 800 dogs dying in that period, and I mean that is indefensible.
Well, the stats for 2024 was 123 dogs. So that's the equivalent of, it's 3 in every 10,000 dogs that might have a fatality. And I think if you compare that to horse racing, it's 0.22. So there'd be 22 horses in 10,000 die in horse racing. And I think there's a bit of a class element here, whereby the working class sport of greyhound racing is getting a lot more focus on it than possibly the sport of kings, whereby there is a higher rate of fatalities. But I think one of the things to realise, Iain, you said it yourself at the very start, these are magnificent sight hounds. You loved watching them in the park or wherever it was you seen them running about. But the safest place for these dogs to run is actually on a safely prepared greyhound track.
Well, clearly it isn't.
Because the track... Well, it depends what you're benchmarking the data against, Iain. If there isn't any data on the amount of injuries in dogs running in dog parks, or dogs running in beaches, or running in forests, or other areas, then there's nothing really to compare that against apart from horse racing. So, we are continuously bringing that number down. A 40-mile-an-hour sight hound is running at a very fast speed, and it's 10 miles faster than you can drive through the town, 20 miles faster than you can go through parts of Wales. So, it's something that, every death, if it does happen, is an absolute tragedy. And we all hope you always hope if you go in for an operation, you're not going to be in that very minuscule amount of people that's going to have a complication. But you still, we have to provide these animals a place where they can exhibit their natural instincts. They need somewhere where they can safely chase a moving object, where they have a very safe surface to do that, where they can chase by sight, and where they can compete against their other dogs from their same breed. That's what their natural instincts are. And if these dogs had to choose between a bowl of food or running after something that it sees at the track, 9 times out of 10 it'll be running after the moving lure. We're doing everything we can to minimise risk.
That's another difference between a greyhound and a miniature schnauzer. The schnauzer would choose the food every time. Now, what about the lifespan of a greyhound? I mean, forget the racing greyhounds. The average lifespan of an average greyhound, say as a pet greyhound, would be what?
Well, they normally race between the age of about 1.5 years until about 4 or 5 years of age. And then they can have a good 10 years after that of retirement. I mean, my old girl, Skinny Jeans, who was my beloved Skinny Jeans, she was 14.5 when we had to put her to sleep. She was just... It was her time. And her daughter's 10 years old and she's still out here running about like a spring chicken. And I've got another little girl now to keep her company and she's 6 years old. And they have a great, for a large breed dog, they actually are a very healthy, genetically healthy breed. They don't have some of the problems that some of the other large breed dogs might have, like hip dysplasia or things like that. And, they are a very healthy breed and they live a very long life, usually up until 12 to 14 years of age. And one of the things sorry.
I was going to say, what happens when they retire, though? Because Dominic was saying that a lot of them are actually shot.
Oh, look, if that happened to any dogs, anybody that I know of in the greyhound industry, we do fight a lot of what I would say is propaganda and misinformation and old information. These dogs are rehomed after they finish racing. The rehoming rates currently for dogs leaving racing in England is up to 94%, which is increased from what it was when we started recording the data in 2018. I think it was something like 87% at that time. So we're up now to 94%. And again, there's a certain percentage of dogs that just through natural causes of death and should it be, disease or whatever, they maybe don't make it to retirement or they have an accident or whatever happens to them. But they are all rehomed now through the Greyhound Board of Great Britain have got a retirement scheme going. It's the Greyhound Retirement Scheme. And what happens is before you can race your dog in England, you have to pay a bond up front. And that means that whenever it comes time for the dog to retire, there's £420 given to any of the recommended rehoming groups to help with the rehoming costs, and the dog should come to them usually neutered as well beforehand. I know that one of the words your caller said, I just caught it before I came on air, and he mentioned wastage, and I mean that's not a word we ever used in the greyhound industry. That was something that was concocted by people that wanted to slander what happens. And one of the things that I wanted to say about that, if a greyhound doesn't show aptitude for racing, they are sought after highly by people and to rehome them as pets, because they can be rehomed with cats and small animals without any problem at all. In fact, we have a wee dog there called Zach that he's about 1.5 years, and he went over to Florida. He was rehomed to Florida there last month, so we'll be writing up a wee story about him. And he just had no interest in chasing the lure and just had no real ability. So look, every dog has to be accounted for. There's very strict traceability. They can be traced through earmarks. They can be traced through microchips since 2025. They've DNA samples taken from the brood, and they have control steward markings. In fact, we're able to identify dogs sometimes even from photographs. Like when some of the politicians come out with their dogs, it's quite easy for us to even identify them just simply by a few clues they might give about the history of their dog. And we can find out about their dog, and then we can, give them any information that they may want.
All right, Linda, thank you very much indeed. That's Linda Bonner there, Greyhound Welfare Ambassador. Well, you've heard both sides of the case there. Should greyhound racing in England be banned, just as it has in Wales and Scotland? I should have asked Linda what the case is in Northern Ireland, given that that's... Linda, are you still there?
Yes.
Yeah, what's the case in Northern Ireland? What happens there? And indeed in the Republic?
Well, funny enough, just hot off the press, I believe just while I was on air, the Minister of Agriculture in the south of Ireland has said that there's definitely no move to be banning greyhound racing in the south of Ireland at all. And last year in England, Lisa Nandy, the Culture Minister, in February had said that even though Wales was moving to a ban, that they were not going to be doing that in Wales. And in Northern Ireland, we've been engaging with our ministers in Northern Ireland at Stormont the last year. And, they know that we are absolutely committed to welfare, and we are working alongside them with any regulations or anything else they want to put our way. We're already regulated, but, they're bringing in Lucy's Law here in Northern Ireland, so we will be affected by that as well. And one of the things, just to say, which I didn't actually say, about Scotland, you did say, yes, there is no greyhound racing in Scotland, and I think there's a lot of taxpayers' money being wasted on, pushing through legislation that some of the ministers there have criticised as a waste of parliamentary time as well. And then if you remember that the deal in Wales came about because the Welsh budget needed to be passed and the Labour government needed a vote to pass it. So the only Liberal Democratic candidate in Wales gave them their vote to pass the Welsh budget with the condition that they would ban greyhound racing. So that's how it was driven by Wales.
Linda, thank you very much indeed. Right, I'm really interested to hear what you're going to say on the phones. Let's go to Nathan in Birchington. Hello, Nathan.
Hello, good evening.
Evening. What would you like to say?
My blood is boiling listening to your first guest, Dominic. I mean, the lies that he's coming out with, we hear them time and time again.
Well, I mean, I don't like it when people accuse people of lying, but, I mean, he did come out with statistics. What are you taking exception to?
Saying that thousands are killed after racing simply is not true. I mean, just shy of 94% were homed last year. Any of those that don't go into a home is unfortunately because they've died of various reasons before they get to that point. When we look at the statistics, if that's what you want to sort of focus on, he mentioned 3,809 injuries, and he called them serious injuries.
No, I think it was 35,000 injuries.
Well, that's not true. The GBGB figures are 3,809 injuries last year.
Yeah, I think this was over a 6-year period.
Yeah, well, if we just focus on this year, because that is not serious injuries at all. That is anything from a broken nail to a sore muscle, and they're picked up because there's a vet present at every race course. So as soon as the dog's finished racing, it's checked over by the vet, and any small issue is picked up and recorded.
But the fact is, 1,357 dogs have died in that period. And I mean, I was genuinely shocked by that.
Yeah, it is shocking and it is sad. And I'll be the first one to put my hands up and admit that more can be done to improve that. But as a percentage, it's 0.03% chance of a dog dying.
But people don't care about percentages. They think, no, this is like 1,300 dogs that have died in a relatively short period of time. And I know we have the same, there are horse deaths in horse racing as well. And you can, I mean, Linda cited the comparative statistic there, but I mean, it is still pretty horrific.
It is, yeah, but brandishing figures around achieves nothing. We need to give it context. I mean, a study in 2017 showed that 64,000 dogs died because of dog-on-dog attacks. Yeah. Should we ban ownership of dogs? How many are killed every day, every year by cars? Should we ban cars?
Well, we'll leave that question hanging, Nathan. No, you make a perfectly fair point. But I don't think there's anybody who wasn't horrified by hearing that statistic. And I mean, I wasn't expecting to hear that, I must say. And we all think of, I mean, not all breeds of dog are beautiful to look at. Not all breeds of dog are very fast runners. But when you watch a greyhound running, whether it's in the park or anywhere else, it is a sight to behold. And you think, well, seriously, they're dying after running around a racing track? I don't think anybody outside the sector would have ever thought that that was really possible, apart from the odd one that, just as I say, footballers, and I'm being taken to task, they don't have heart attacks on pitch, apparently they have cardiac arrests. Just as footballers do that, then I'm sure that there are dogs that do that too. Nathan, thank you very much indeed. We'll come to more of your calls in a moment. Should greyhound racing be banned in England, and in Northern Ireland, just as it has been in Scotland and Wales this week? It's 9:31. Daryl Jackson has the news headlines.
Fears over rising bills have persuaded the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee to freeze the base rate of interest at 3.75%. All 9 members voted to keep the status quo. Concerns around a global energy crisis are increasing after attacks on power networks from both sides of the conflict in the Middle East. President Trump says the war will be over pretty soon. And more than 100 students have been turned away from getting meningitis B jabs at the University of Kent today. The clinic will reopen in the morning along with other centres as the number of cases in the county stands at 27. LBC weather: cloudy in southeast Scotland and northeast England tonight. Clear elsewhere, a low of 1 degree.
This is LBC.
If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, what you thought you were getting may not be what you ended up with. From unexpected site fee increases, running costs, a huge depreciation in value, many owners feel they've been missold. If you think this might be you, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive the compensation you're entitled to. Text ASSIST to 78900 to find out more. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Hey, you! Yeah, you! What would you like from your investing app? 6% interest on your ISA, a free share of your choice, or no commission on stocks and ETFs up to €100,000 per month? With XTB, you get all of the above all in one app, the XTB app. Get your free share and start investing with XTB today. XTB, where your money works.
Capital at risk. Investment values can rise or fall. Limited free stock availability. 2% ISA rate boost for 90 days. New clients only. T's and C's apply.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on. Sorry.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
9:35 on LBC. Right, let's go to your calls on should greyhound racing be banned. Millie is in Cleethorpes. Hello, Millie.
Hi, I'm just totally gobsmacked that anyone could agree with it. As a dog lover, I just can't see how anyone would. You'd want that for your animal, for your pet. I've got a mini schnauzer as well, and I just couldn't ever imagine leaving her in conditions like that.
No, but to be fair, I mean, obviously it's a breed of dog, but it might as well be a different breed, a miniature schnauzer to a greyhound. And greyhounds are, I mean, they run so fast for a reason. I mean, I don't think they've been bred to do that. That's just their natural thing.
They are bred to do that, but to an extent, people are breeding them to get the fastest dog. You know, like when you in Crufts, they're breeding dogs to get the breed standard. They're breeding dogs for speed to compete. But what does that compromise health? They're being health tested. And, you know, as I think one of the gentlemen who said, you know, they shoot these dogs if they're, you know, a bit useless, they're overbred, they just shoot them.
Well, Linda was denying that, so I'm not sure who to believe on that.
I struggle to believe that it's not true. Because some of these dogs, they sleep in kennels their entire lives. You know, they've never seen a piece of carpet. You know, my dog sleeps in the bed. I just couldn't ever imagine a dog in a kennel like that for the whole of their lives. And when they come out of these kennels, some of them don't have hair from the stress. It never grows back. They're so skinny. They struggle to regain the weight. That's not a dog lover to me. People who do that, you're not doing that because you love your dog.
Yeah. Did you say your dog sleeps in your bed or on your bed?
Both.
You see, there'll be people listening and think, oh my God, how could you possibly have a dog in your bed?
You know what? They're not here for long. This is her house. She can do what she wants. You know, we don't get them for long. So if she wants to sleep in the bed, she absolutely can.
How old is she?
She's 15 months.
Oh, lovely. Well, I never thought, I mean, I grew up with Jack Russells and I never expected to have a miniature schnauzer. We've had two now and they are the most brilliant dogs. They really are.
My partner's always had lurchers and I've had spaniels, so this was sort of a compromise for us.
Strange compromise.
Yeah.
Millie, thank you very much. Betty says, Iain, being born to run is not necessarily the same as being born to race. That is true. That's from Lizzie in Walthamstow. And in addition, the greyhound racing industry is grotesque in its practices. Well, I can't judge that. I mean, we've heard both sides of the story from our guests there, but it's not. I lived in Walthamstow for 4 years. Never went to the dog track, I must admit. It's not really something that I would have been interested in doing. But then again, I've only been to horse racing about twice in my life. Again, not something that's for me. Andrew is calling in all the way from Stockholm. Andrew, hello.
Hello, Ian. First of all, thank you for your restaurant recommendation.
Oh, did you go?
I took up. I did. Excellent.
It was, wasn't it? Did you give my regards to the head waiter?
I did.
Did he remember me?
Well, I don't know if he knew you by name. Anyway, I'm calling about the Greyhound.
Yes.
So I am somewhat of an animal lover, and when you see a dog that is in pain on the side of the road as you're walking down, your natural empathic feeling is to look after a dog. And when we talk about statistics, like, for example, you had an Northern Irish caller who was talking about the number of dogs who were killed or injured on Irish Greyhound racing tracks. I can tell you that last year alone, 400 greyhounds died on such tracks. Now, whether they died through natural causes or through abuse, I cannot tell you because statistics are raw data. But statistics force us to think like statisticians rather than empathic human beings. And I think if anyone were to look at the type of mistreatment that animals undergo in industries, and it is an industry like greyhound racing, we would all think twice. There is a nostalgic thing that it's kind of like a game of chance, a working man's sport or whatever, but that is all BS, unfortunately. We need to take a cold, hard look at things like this. And therefore, I am in favour of banning this blood sport because that is.
Come on! Don't exaggerate. It's not a blood sport.
Well, it's close to it if there are that many deaths. I'm not going to mount the barricades for this, but we do need to take a cold, hard look at it.
Do you know the Swedish word for greyhound?
I don't actually.
Vinthund.
Så mycket bra svenska.
Vinthund.
Vinthund. Du har rätt.
Andrew, thank you very much indeed. By the way, the restaurant in Sweden, if you want to go to it, if you're going to Stockholm, it's the King Frans Hotel. It's absolutely brilliant. Right, Paul is in Belfast. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Ian.
What would you like to say?
Basically, I only caught the end of Linda, the debate there, and it's quite an emotive topic. And I strongly think that greyhound racing should be banned. Yes, it's unfair on the trainers and owners that spend a lot of money and a lot of effort in training, basically pedigree animals. But on the converse of that, there is a lot of cruelty, and there's a term called the long walk, that if the young greyhounds don't settle whenever they're being tested on the course for the traps, whenever the hare goes past, if they don't settle and they're deemed to be not potentially fit for racing, quite a lot of them are shot or hit with a shovel and killed on a long walk.
Hit with a shovel? What evidence is there for that?
It's common knowledge. Yes, there's a lot of, especially working class areas, a lot of people or used to be a lot of people with greyhounds. In Belfast, I rescued a greyhound myself. I did go to races, and yes, it's exciting. It's exciting when you see a greyhound or a pack of greyhounds chasing. And yes, they are happiest when they're sprinting. Yes, I accept that. It's in their nature. But if they are injured, it costs money. They're terminated. And as I say, once I got my rescue Greyhound, it put me off going to the Greyhound racing whenever I heard just how badly they were treated. And as I say, that term, the long walk, where they're brought up country roads. And
I mean, that sounds absolutely horrific, I must admit.
Yeah, and as I say, it got me quite emotive whenever I heard about that.
Yeah.
And Linda, I was going to ask Linda if I had a cutter. I mean, what really made me decide to basically turn against Greyhound racing was quite nearly a Greyhound that got its ears cut off and thrown out the back of a moving van on a motorway. And they cut its ears off because obviously they wouldn't be able to recognise the dog. So whenever you meet low life, or whenever you encounter low life doing that to pure dogs,
you see, that's
an industry that should be taught.
No, and you see, I think most horse owners, whether there are sort of on farms or whether they breed horses, they absolutely love the horses. And there does seem to be a little bit of a difference here. I'm not saying this for all Greyhound owners whatsoever, but from what you said and what I've heard from other people is that they're seen as a commodity to win races and make money. Now, horses are there to win races and make money for their owners, I suppose. But there does seem to be a little bit of a difference, and that's where I cannot understand the mentality of anyone that owns a dog that would want to mistreat it. Now, we know that there are pet owners who, well, they shouldn't ever be pet owners, but they mistreat their animals. But if you have a Greyhound kennels and you are racing dogs, you'd like to think that you would actually treat them well, because that would probably improve their performance on the racetrack. But
I would agree. Whenever I got my Greyhound, whoever owned him previously definitely looked after him. He was, top quality at his peak, but obviously he didn't produce at the races, so they gave him a second chance. They didn't kill him. They gave him up for adoption, and thankfully I got him. But he was a lucky one. So whenever people realise just what other colours are commenting on, what goes on behind the scenes, I don't think it's right. If the industry cannot be governed and 100% guaranteed that cruelty no longer exists, well then that industry should be terminated themselves.
Connor, thank you very much. Sorry, not Connor. He's the next text I'm going to read out. Paul, thank you very much indeed for calling in. Connor says, in Ireland, the vast majority of racing greyhounds are bred to race in the UK. And as a result, there is massive overbreeding, resulting in as much as 6,000 dogs killed a year. That's the stat from a 2017 RTE documentary, Running for Their Lives. And there is likely many more that aren't accounted for. These are just the dogs that don't make it to the track. Some retired racing greyhounds have been sent to Pakistan and China, where they suffer unimaginable torture. See, this is terrible, isn't it? And I think there are some real problems in Ireland about dog breeding, because you look at the number of dogs that are bred in Ireland and then are adopted in the UK. My sister has had two I never can remember the difference between Labradors and Golden Retrievers. And you think that just should not be happening. My other sister has adopted dogs from Romania. And you think, well, I mean, there's a real problem here. I mean, nothing to do with racing dogs at all. It's just the generality of dog breeding. You look at the puppy farms that exist in this country. I'm not pretending that we're whiter than white. I think that there is legislation that's gone through in recent years that has tried to eliminate puppy farms, but I don't think it's been very successful. Right, we'll take more of your calls on whether greyhound racing should be banned in just a moment. It's 9:46.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Nigel Farage's a Muslim prayer event in London is a wake-up call. But what is it we're meant to be waking up to? Plus why more and more men are abandoning their female partners on mountain hikes.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Pain in my hip. I keep feeling dizzy. I'm getting migraines more often.
There's another way to contact your GP practice by simply sending your symptoms and requests through their website or the NHS app. We're delivering an NHS fit for the future. Tap it, type it, and we'll take care of it.
Julia, how do you spell vertebrae?
Oh, just type pain in the neck.
With an Amex business card, Selena's earning points renovating her skin clinic and refreshing the builders.
14 coffees and 28 sugars, please.
And on new adjustable chairs for every room. And she can use the points to lie back and relax.
Don't put ice cream on your brother's head.
Well, sometimes. And that's because with an Amex business card, your points can go towards holidays and more.
Search Amex Business Card. Interest, fees and terms apply. Available to UK limited companies and limited liability partnerships. Signatories must be a director or member of the business. Subject to approval.
What's the best present you ever got for your birthday? I bet it wasn't as life-changing as £1 million. Every week with the birthday draw, there's £1 million to be won. And you can enter from as little as £1 or via post. Enter by midnight on Sunday and your special day could win you £1 million. Visit thebirthdaydraw.com. Is it your lucky day? From Global and ITV. 18 plus, UK only, no purchase necessary.
A message from TfL.
I saw him in the local news a few days after. His name's Rakesh. They had to put him into a coma just because I didn't look again at that turning. He had 2 kids. How did I not see his bike ahead of me? Well, I didn't look again. He didn't make it.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:48 on LBC. Matt has sent a charming text message. I love you, Iain, but your naivety about the current subject and your eagerness to send British sailors and pilots to their deaths are absolutely related. Keep learning, my friend. I've no eagerness to send anyone to their death. I mean, that would be psychotic, Matt, and I'm not psychotic. Claire is in Croydon. Hello, Claire.
Hi, Iain.
Hello.
How are you?
What would you like to say?
To be honest, I don't know an awful lot about Greyhound racing, only, what we all see, but I don't agree with it at all. I think it's there purely for our entertainment. I don't know how long the Greyhounds race for, but then it's what happens afterwards to them. Where do they go? You see so many that go into retirement and have to be adopted, quite often with health issues. They're quite nervy dogs, very delicate dogs. I just don't agree with it at all.
Why do you think it survived for so long?
Because it's there for entertainment, isn't it? And
see, I'm not sure it is. I think it's, from what we have heard, from what I've looked into today, it's there for betting purposes.
Yeah, exactly. So entertainment to make money. It's a money-making scheme. I don't expect that it's probably what's the word I'm looking for? Particularly well run. The dogs probably aren't very well cared for. Again, it's just a money-making business.
We heard earlier that from, I think it was Linda who said that there are vets at every racetrack, and all the dogs are checked over after each race.
No.
So I'm not sure what else you would want. I mean, that indicates that they are cared for.
But it's not. They're being bred to do something that I know they like, exercising, and I think actually with greyhounds they don't actually need to be exercised as much as we think.
But why don't we ban crofts then?
Well, crofts is slightly different.
What, is it? Because dogs are being bred for our entertainment. That there are some dogs, presumably, that are bred purely because their owners want to display them at crofts. Now, I'm sure you don't get many dogs dying at crofts, so there is a difference. But you take my point.
Not really. I think it's a slightly different point. You're showcasing your dogs. They're doing tricks, etc. This is about, pushing a dog to their limits round a track. I don't know. As I said at the beginning of the call, I haven't got enough background to it. I certainly haven't done my research. It's just on the surface of it, I don't agree with it. The same way I don't agree with horse racing either.
You're the same as me. I came to this subject with a gut instinct that I couldn't see why on earth people would want to ban it. Greyhounds are very fast dogs. They like racing, so what's the problem? But as we've discovered in the last 52 minutes, there are a lot of problems. Claire, thank you very much indeed. Niall does not want to sleep in the same bed as Millie. He says, she sleeps with her dog in bed. That's filthy. Well, clearly she doesn't think so. I mean, I don't have my miniature Schnauzer in bed with me, but he sleeps on the top of the bed. Do you think I'm filthy? Don't answer that. Patrick's in Liverpool. Hello, Patrick.
Evening, Ian. Thanks for taking the call, mate.
Hi.
Hello?
Yeah, what's your point, Patrick?
See, I don't believe they should be banned, but after, that's what I told your colleague when I was speaking to them earlier. But I knew it. I knew once I'd started listening to people who are actually in the industry, something seriously is wrong. Like, because why would two separate countries, Wales and Scotland, want to ban it? Something's happening in it. Like, once these dogs who are running purposely, all they're doing is making people lots of money. And then once they're no longer fit to run or they're injured, they must just, as that guy say, hitting them over the head with a shovel and it's game over. Something's wrong, innit?
Well, I think there is something wrong. I think that there's various things that we've found out in this discussion, whether it's from our two guests at the beginning or whether it's some callers. I think there are some serious questions to answer. But, I have to say, in Scotland, it's pure virtue signalling, given that there are no greyhound racing tracks in Scotland any longer.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So I can't really see the point of that. Patrick, thank you. Let's move on to Paul, who is in Northern Ireland, in Coleraine. Hello, Paul.
No, I'm Coleraine, but it's a good bit away, 50 mile away. How you doing, Ian?
Hi, not too bad. What would you like to say?
I have greyhounds myself. I train greyhounds and I own greyhounds and I train greyhounds for other people in almost a professional way. I have 13 greyhounds racing at the minute in Northern Ireland and the south of Ireland. I have about 9 pups, about 8 weeks old, between 8 weeks and 16 weeks. I have 3 dogs injured at the minute, and they're only injured because of a dew claw. One of them's got a cut pad. They are trained to absolute perfection. Then people that rung in there and said about dogs' ears being cut off and threw out of the back of vans is absolute nonsense. Have you seen my dogs now? They're absolutely immaculate. They're shining. They're the love running. I've never had a dog that had to be put down in about 15 years. You can't have a greyhound unless you have plans for it to be rehomed. You're not allowed to train a greyhound. This is in Ireland now. I'm not sure about England. So,
how many did you say you have? 10?
27 altogether.
27?
13 racing, yes. And the rest of them would be 3 injured. And I have about 7 or 8 pups, something like that, at 8 weeks old, 12 weeks old.
Well,
They will start racing about 14 months old. A dog starts about 18 months old, 16 months old. And that fella that says about dogs not coming out of the traps and not chasing the lure that they're taken away and put down, that doesn't happen. A greyhound will chase the lure. They'll come out of the traps. They're not put in traps at the start. They're trained, they're give a hand slip without being put into the traps. They do that 3 or 4 times. They get used to it. Then they're gradually put into the traps. They run for about 500 yards, about 700 yards maximum. Absolutely, and they're not running around parks. You don't have greyhounds that run around parks.
How do they live?
They live in immaculate conditions. There's a girl come on there and says they don't see carpet. They live on carpet. It's the best stuff for them and straw. You're not allowed to have a greyhound to travel in a transit van unless it has got air conditioning. you can't have a greyhound. What else is there? There's heating in the kennels.
And do you, I mean, obviously if you own 27, I was going to ask you what you might have thought was a bit of a strange question. I mean, I absolutely love my dogs.
Yeah.
But you can't love 27 dogs, can you?
You can. I love to see you coming in the mornings, the pups, they're jumping up on you. You can absolutely love 27 greyhounds. I would do anything for my greyhounds. As I say, every one of them are rehomed after they're finished, as I wouldn't be able to train a dog or own a dog unless you have them scheduled to be rehomed. That other thing that come on in RTE in 2017 about dogs being taken away and shot, that did happen on one or two occasions. It has all changed. The dogs are all checked by vets before the race. They're checked after the race. They're checked for doping. There's absolutely all them phone calls that was coming in there, absolute nonsense. The woman from Northern Ireland was the only one that spoke and knew anything about it. She had the statistics and everything, 0.2%. Sure, 0.2% of a budgie would be killed every year. You know.
Budgie racing. Now, there's something new that we can do.
I'm just saying, I'm just saying, like, you could walk out on the street and but 0.2%.
Well, listen, Paul, you have redressed the balance of the conversation, and thank you very much for phoning in. Dominic says, greyhounds today are raced for the big bookmakers. There is no one at most meetings. I think we should introduce guinea pig racing instead. Well, you may be surprised to know that I, as a child, used to breed guinea pigs. I had 50 of them at one stage, and I have this vague recollection that we did try and race them. I don't think it ended well, though. Thank you very much indeed for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'm back on Saturday morning from 10 o'clock. I'm sitting in for Matt Fry for one weekend only. If you missed any of this evening's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinion. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Clive Bull, but right now, LBC's very own greyhound, Ben Kentish.
Thank you, Ian. The sort of, who knew you were a guinea pig breeder? My son wants a guinea pig, I know it.
Thanks, Ian. Hello, a very, very good evening indeed to you this Thursday night on the programme.
What happened in Trafalgar Square this week should act as a wake-up call and a warning to everybody.
The row over comments made by the Shadow Justice Secretary explodes today as both Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage leap to the defence of Nick Timothy, who claimed that a